Thank you, Corey. Good to see you here.
Well, an official good morning to all of the MetPGA professionals and other professionals around the country that are joining us today. My name is Corey Muller. I'm the chair of the Education Committee for the Metropolitan PGA, and it's my privilege to welcome everybody to the 58th Annual MetPGA Spring Education Forum. Today, we're making history. We're offering this forum for the first time in a virtual format, as well as welcoming professionals from other sections across the country, sections that include Middle Atlantic, Central New York, Philadelphia, and Illinois. I want to welcome all of those professionals to the Met section and truly thank you for your participation today. This event has a rich history as we gather some of the greatest minds in teaching and coaching. Some past presenters for the Met PGA include Harvey Penick, Gary Wyron, Jim McLean, Dave Pelz, Bob Rotella, Bob Toski, David Ledbetter, Butch Harmon, and Sean Foley. This year is no exception, as we have the privilege of hearing from Lee Cox, Martin Borgmeier, Lucas Wald, John Novosel, and Bernie Najjar. I want to thank the MetPGA Education Committee for their tireless efforts this year, not only in planning this event, but a lot of the winter education platform that a lot of you participated in. Mike Ballo, Karina Capabianco, Andrew Gruss, Sam Wiley, and a special thanks to Kevin Sprecher and my co-chairman, John Hobbins, who will be helping through this presentation today, as he will introduce our presenters and he will handle the questions in the chat bar, which I encourage all of you to use for questions or any comments as today progresses. John and Kevin, thanks so much for tapping into your network and your relationships to execute today's presentation. A little bit of housekeeping for our section, some upcoming events of note. Next week, another offering from our committee on April 20th will be an evening with Daniel Berger, a multi-PGA Tour winner brought to us by Adidas Golf. We're really excited to spend a little time with Daniel to get a peek behind the curtain. As well as on April 21st, we have a seminar from our partners at Therabody and Theragun. Sounds like there might be some giveaways included in that, so I'm excited to hear how to get our bodies prepped for this year coming up. So in recap, our committee set out to find a topic of relevance this year for this spring forum. I think you can all agree as instructors that not a lesson goes by lately without a student in search of some more speed and distance. So I, for one, spent a lot of time this winter trying to find ways to communicate that to my students. And I'm thoroughly excited about today and to hear from these wonderful presenters who all have some expertise in this field. So it's with great excitement that I'm going to introduce John Hobbins, who will talk about our presenters in the three different segments that we have today. John will also handle some question and answers, and I'll swoop on the back end there and close out today's session. So thanks again to all the professionals for participating today. I really look forward to today. Lee and Martin are going to lead us off. John, thanks for all your help in this, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Corey. Appreciate it. And thank you for getting Daniel Berger next week. That'll be Tuesday evening. And it's always fun to look behind the curtain to see what the best players in the world are doing. And that's what we hope to do here this morning. We're very fortunate. Lee Cox is one of the preeminent long distance coaches in the world. Lee's been doing this for a lot of years, has multiple world champions under his tutelage. And Lee was kind enough to invite Martin Borgmeier, who is a gentleman from Munich, Germany. And Martin has created the fastest ball speed on record, which was 231.9 miles per hour, which I have a video of, and impressive. So Lee, thank you for coming in, and Martin, thank you for coming in from Germany, from your lab, so to speak.
Lovely. Thanks, John. Thank you very much for the invite, and looking forward to today.
Yes, as we have been, because Lee and Martin, you do two things that we all want: speed and distance, right? Not a moment goes by where I don't have somebody come in, topping or sculling wedges, but looking for more distance with their driver. Yeah. And obviously we do first things first. We try to get the ball in the air with that wedge, but then it immediately moves into speed because, with what Martin and your students have done worldwide, and with all of the information on YouTube and gaining speed and distance, the long driving, which are televised here in the States and worldwide now. Lee, you've been doing this for quite a few years. Could you tell us how you got into it?
Yeah, I've been involved in distance and speed training for for 20 years. I slightly fell into it with a bit of interest though, John. And I was a well-renowned coach in London, and Joe Miller, who became the two-time world champion, his dad came to see me, and he asked for a meeting, and he said, my young son would like to have a go in the world of long drive. He said, I think you're the man to help me. So I agreed to all of this. I said, yeah, this is going to be great. Anyway, I got in the car to go home, and I suddenly realised I didn't know anything about long drive. So initially I got into it with a bit of fluke, but there was an interest. I come from a sporty, athletic family. I was a pro. I still am a pro. I don't play so much these days. I did hit the ball quite a long way. But I had a big interest in distance, and I had a big interest in power. And from the very early days, this is probably 2002, 2003, I started looking at long drive swings. I started looking at training methods. I'm not a gym expert, but I started looking in that area. And then my knowledge rolled on and on. And as the years gone on, I went into ball flight. I went into biomechanics, and even it's my nature a little bit day to day. I'll try and read or pick up a new subject every day that I think will help me. So 20 years later, luckily enough, I've had 100 wins in the world of long drive. I still have that same interest. And where no one was that interested in long drive before, they love to get a bit of distance. Now with Bryson, there's a lot of interest in the sport.
Yes, and fortunately for Martin, since those 20 years have gone by, you have learned how to do it.
Yes, I've got a little template, or I've got some ideas in my brain that seem to have had some success, and I've been able to repeat that success with different players, with different swing models. So obviously I've refined it over the years. I guess with all coaching, some ideas I've tried didn't work, some do work, and it is experience. Whether you're like yourself, John, a putting coach, a chipping coach, you can gain as much knowledge as you can, and then you need to make it work, you know, in the bay that day or in the studio. And, you know, I've been lucky. I've been able to get those things over to my students with a bit of success.
And when somebody like Martin shows up who already has speed, that must be something to relish.
Yeah, you could say I'm lucky. You could say that I was lucky that I was given Joe Miller all those years ago, who was obviously an athletic superstar in the world of long drive as it went to be. But I guess you earned the right to deal with those people. So Martin came through the door probably 3 years ago now, Martin, maybe 2018.
That was March 2018, yeah.
March 20. So Martin walked through the door, but Martin's start point, correct me if I'm wrong, Martin started at a 143, 144 clubhead speed without great technique. So at the moment he came through the door, one of the first things I ever said to him, I said, you will have a chance of winning the World Championship at some point. It will come your way, and that still will. So I knew that he had the talent, which, you know, however good a coach I am, I don't think I could get a 99-mile-an-hour swinging man to win the World Long Drive Championship, but I know what to do with the speed. So I'm a very lucky man that I'm given people of tremendous athletic ability. And I guess these days I've got good at not ruining them.
Yeah, I think with over 100 victories worldwide, and with Martin having the fastest ball speed ever recorded, it's safe to say that. Martin, you entered long drive competition in 2017, was it?
That's true. Yeah, actually it happened by accident because I didn't register for the event, someone else did. Right, I was not playing golf for like 5 years, from like, when was that? 2012 through 2017 or something, because, you know, I had my first girlfriend, motorcycle, and all these nice things, right? It wasn't too sexy to play golf back in the day, so I switched to basketball and really had to increase or improve my physique because I was lacking the basketball technique a little bit. So then I gained like, I don't know, 10 kilos maybe. That's like 22 pounds. During that time when I was playing basketball, and all these moves I was doing during that basketball era was very explosive moves, right? So I was playing under the basket, in the paint, right? I didn't have a great technique, so I really had to use my physique to get those buckets, right? And that mixture between the technique of the old days, because I was playing golf as a junior, and that improved physique was really a mixture to hit a ball a long way, right? But you won't know until you play a long drive competition, because obviously I was hitting it further than all these old guys at my local golf club, right? They were driving it like 220 maybe, and I didn't even know if I was hitting it 300 or whatever, right? Because I didn't know any numbers. I didn't even know what club speed is. I didn't know anything. And then, yeah, these guys, some of my friends registered me for a long drive event in Germany. That's when I really looked into that topic for the very first time, got my first long driver. Well, and that event went pretty well. And all these pros there that I've beat told me to take this seriously. And then, well, I checked the whole internet for long drive instruction, and well, there's not a lot out there, but everything I could found, I used that, worked my ass off, and reached out to Lee.
And that's how the relationship started.
Kind of, yeah. I still remember when I was driving to London, and you guys in the US that don't know how far that is, for Europeans, that's very far from Munich to London. That's like an 11-hour drive, right? With a ferry and everything. So I was driving up there by car, and I saw Lee for the very first time, and I didn't understand a single word. But not because his content was so weird, because of his accent, right? And then, but I adapted to it step by step, and I knew what he was talking about. And I was already working throughout the winter, right? And I was increasing my speed a little bit, but my technique back in the days was terrible. When I look at it right now, it's laughable, really. And Lee completely changed everything about it, from the setup throughout everything. And yeah, that's basically how I, even at those speeds, increased my club head speed by like 12, 13, 14 miles per hour.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, especially at those speeds, every single mile is like tremendous. So it's, yeah, that was really, I was so lucky to work with Lee, because I still remember he's always, I believe, I don't know, correct me, Lee, if I'm wrong, but I believe he's really measuring every single student before he's working with them, because he wants to see what they put up, right? Which numbers they put up. So he set down his radar. We were hitting a couple of balls, and then it was like, yeah, all right, you didn't lie to me about your numbers, so now we can start working.
This Martin, though, and John, this goes through the whole of golf, yeah, is that if I've been in a golf clubhouse for 30 years, I've had 8 million guys tell me to hit it a long way, yeah? So I guess in my brain, when someone says they're swinging at mid-140s or hitting it for, I thought, well, you're probably not, but let's see whether you're telling the truth or not. But Martin was telling the truth.
That's refreshing.
Yeah.
So, Martin, you mentioned swing technique. So when the two of you work together, let's say, Lee, you take long drive, and obviously you teach the person who's trying to break 100. Do you consider swing technique, out of all the variables that the two of you work on, would swing technique be at the top of that pyramid?
It would be really high up there, John. A lot of people come into long drive, or even, let's just take amateurs or professionals. You need a decent swing to produce any speed. You need decent sequencing. You need the things to happen in the right pattern. You need to hit solid golf shots. So, long drive differs from playing golf. I mean, I teach lots of pros, lots of amateurs, lots of long drivers. They all have to hit good shots if they want to get to their maximum speed. Everyone has an athletic ceiling. So, some people are never going to swing at 100. Some people are never going to swing at 120. But most people operate well below their potential. Number one, because they don't have a good enough swing. Number one, they might not genetically have the right body. They don't develop themselves correctly. But as you said, as a swing itself, you need a very good golf swing. I got it wrong 15 years ago. I thought you could be really fast, but I learned pretty swiftly you need to be fast with a really good technique as well.
Right. And so then when we're looking at, so we're going to put swing technique as one of the very important variables. And then you have strength training, you have mobility training, and you have speed training, from conversations we've had in the past. How do the two of you go about doing these different variables?
So I'll answer that, but then I'll get Martin to answer the second bit. I think if I was going to add one other thing to that, I would probably add tempo, John. And I think later on you've got John Novosel, who's the king of tempo. So
yes, the tour tempo gentleman.
Yeah, so he's really, really, really worth listening to. He gives some great information. I think in my brain, you need good technique. You need a body to carry that good technique. So you need to work on your body. You need mobility. A lot of people say flexibility, but you could be too flexible. So you need mobility. And then you need to be able to speed train. It would depend on the person a little bit, what they came in, what they were missing, and also what they were willing to work on. You know, I might broach the subject with someone that I think they need to get a bit stronger, and they'll say to me, Lee, I'm working 6 days a week. I'm never going to go near the gym. So it has to be bespoke to the person. Obviously, someone serious like a pro golfer or a long driver will try to cover all of those angles. But yeah, so for me, it would be mechanics, swing mechanics, body, speed training, tempo, and mobility. And Martin might add a bit to that.
Yeah, what's interesting about mobility actually is in the very beginning when I couldn't find the right positions, right? Because in long drive, especially backswing length, right, is a topic that consists of a lot of different areas. You should be very mobile. But once I've reached those points, so once I've reached the mobility I've needed, it became less important, because I believe mobility is important until it's not. So at some point, I've reached all these positions. And from then on, it was not like I was working on my mobility like every day. It's more of a weekly topic or 2 times a week thing that I'm doing my stretches. I mean, I'm doing my basic stretches every day, but that has nothing to do with mobility. That's more of a cool down thing I'm doing. But in terms of mobility, it's really about the importance until it's not. And then I believe once you've nailed a decent technique, and once you've reached, well, let's say the limit of your swing, you can only increase, or it's easier to increase that swing speed by strength training, right? You can be as strong as you want if you don't have decent technique. Imagine a bodybuilder, right, that lifts, or a power lifter that, don't know, squats 500 pounds, right? Give him a golf club, he won't swing at 100 miles, probably, roughly, yeah, with terrible technique. So I believe there's a limit at some point to technique, and it's really, really hard to increase that. And by strength training, you can really push that limit with the side effect of staying healthy, because what we're doing to our bodies, obviously also in golf, is crazy, right? It helps to stay in balance, to stay healthy. But what I've seen is, because people always ask me about my back and my wrists and everything, and what I'm doing to my body in terms of long drive, I don't see that being hurting more or being more risky than normal golf, because in long drive, we use 4-inch tees and we hit up on the ball. So we don't drag these like super large divots, right? Which can be very hard on your body and especially your wrists. So I don't know, Lee, if you've seen someone injure themselves tremendously in long drive, but for the last 4 years, I've been taking care of my body and it's been fine.
Yeah, a lot of people I hear say, you know, Bryson, he's going to injure himself. Yeah. He's going to injure himself. But I believe, you know, he's not a silly guy, is he? He's a clever man. He's surrounded himself with the best people in golf, the best trainers. And one of the things that I heard him actually say, and we learned this from the long drive, but can be applied to amateurs. If you want to hit a lot of balls, and you want to hit a lot of balls fast, you need a body that can take that type of stress. So he's been very clever. He's contacted the right people. He's made sure his body can take the type of abuse as such he's given it. And to answer your question, Martin, with long drivers probably are the least amount that I've seen injured. I think their bodies are just better at taking a lot of hits as such.
Probably.
So, you know, we have a lot of golf professionals in the room here who are, you know, instructing at their clubs and, you know, work at, you know, private and public facilities and with their members and with their clients. And so when somebody comes in to want to create speed, obviously, you know, we work on technique, but it seems to me that we have to have a very honest conversation with them that, you know, in addition to your technique, there's what we call flexibility, which is the ability of your muscles and tendons to stretch. We have mobility, which is more mobility refers to how your joints move, like so how your hip joint might move, or how your shoulder joints might move, how your wrist joints move. So joints are more mobility, whereas muscles are more flexibility. And in addition to that, as you both alluded to, we have strength training. So there's only so far we're going to go with technique. Could we agree upon that, as Martin stated?
Yeah, it depends what the person wants to do, John. John just said earlier, you know, you might get a client come in and she is willing to attack it from every angle, yeah? And they might dedicate a lot of time to it. So I think there's the same, and it wouldn't really matter if this was a power or distance lesson. Part of that conversation that we'd have at the beginning of the lesson, they'd make a statement to me, you know, I'd like to get longer. So I'm going to take a quick overview on them, you know, just look really vague one. I'm going to look at them and we'll have a chat and see what they can do. Then I will actually offer what I think would be the best case scenario for them to add some distance and to add some speed. They might then say to me, I'm injured, I don't go down the gym. And then I'll have to look at an alternative way to do that. And then during the lesson, my normal pattern would be is I'd get them on a basic launch monitor. I'll get their numbers. I'll have a look at their swing on video. At this stage, I won't recommend any fitness people to them. I just want to see what their start point is. And the more you get to know them over those first sort of 1 or 2 sessions, then you can direct them down the avenue that you think will be the best for them. So technique's going to give them a bit, strength training is going to give them a bit, tempo will give them a bit, and speed training, which was a dark art of the long drivers for many years, which people have seen snippets now, super speed. Super speed's a good product, but it's not everything. But people have seen a lot more of those things, which, let's take super speed, for instance. If you never wanted to go in the gym in your life, you would get some speed gains from that. But there's many other things on top of super speed that can help with your speed.
So we could do as much away from the practice tee as we can do on the practice tee, which is what I'm hearing.
If you're dedicated enough to put the time in, you can get big gains. I've always had this phrase that I can add 10 miles an hour to everyone, yeah? And I'm still going with that because I've been able to do that at the moment. But it does take some hard work. You can't just sit back and hope it's going to happen. I think the biggest thing I learned on the way, John, is that a lot of people felt that speed was a God-gifted genetic thing. And, you know, don't get me wrong, the 140 guys, 150 guys like Martin, they obviously have that athletic ability. But one thing I learned many years ago is speed is a skill. Is a skill that can be learned and can be worked at. So don't ever believe you can't get your client faster, because it is a skill. It's not a God-given talent.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's true. And I might add that, yeah, there's the speed component, obviously, regarding the technique. My statement was more in the direction of you can achieve a lot by technique and add something to it by strength training. So as Lee said, it's all the tiny bits plus speed training, plus what's tremendous actually is intent, because a lot of people are scared of hitting the ball as hard as they can or as fast as they can. And it obviously takes courage to go through a time period of hitting with maximum intent at certain practice sessions plus on course, right? And you need to push through it. And I mean, Bryson was one of the examples that really used that Corona break to really push his body, to really push his swing to those boundaries, right? And I mean, he was the only guy and first guy that actually dared to push through it on the PGA Tour, right? With success. And I believe that's also another component that doesn't really fit into one of these brackets, is intent and courage.
Okay, when you say intent, Martin, obviously when you're competing, define for us your intent.
So when I address the ball, so right now, so I mean, I've come a long way, right? Over the last 3 years, I approached the ball a little bit different, or I address the ball a little bit different now, because what I feel right now is effortless speed, actually. But I've been practicing this for 3 years. So I've really, with Lee's help, I've really pushed my swing in a direction of not really feeling fast, because that's another thing. You cannot feel speed. It's correct. Impossible. So you need a measure speed. That's why when you do speed training, It might be speed sticks, it might be normal drivers. You always need to measure it, because on one day you might feel terrible and you're the fastest ever, and vice versa. So both is possible. You cannot feel it. And that's why I've been going into the direction of effortless speed with a lot of ground reaction force work. We've really been improving my footwork over the last year. And that's actually the way I address the ball right now. But in terms of maximum intent, I mean, for me, it's actually combined with tempo. Swing it back, take it back as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, and find the right sequence to smash that ball, right? Because that's when you're the fastest. And dare, on the practice range, dare to hit some ball flights you've never seen before, in a good and in a bad way. That's part of the game. That's part of increasing your speed.
Right, so you have to give yourself a hall pass on bad shots or bad results. Because go ahead, Lee.
Sorry, John. Sorry, Martin. I think there's a real big point there. Carl Welty, John, I don't know if you've heard of him, was a famous American coach down in Florida.
Yes.
And he had the famous studio, and he was one of the first guys who was really doing slow-mo video. And he's a great YouTube channel to look at. He's passed away now, unfortunately, but he's left a great legacy of video work. And he did some videos with John Daly, Davis Love, and Greg Norman, and he measured their swing speeds in his studio, and he measured their swing speeds on the course. And I think Daly and Love were quite a bit faster than Greg Norman, but they played at a lower speed, where Greg Norman unusually actually played at 100% of his potential. Now, Davis Love and John Daly were swinging on the course about 92% of their potential. Now, to go back to what Martin said, from a practice and point of view, if you can change your intent in practice to actually hit shots at 100%. Imagine this is crazy intent hitting speed, and here is your playing speed. If you can push the intent speed up, you're not gonna play with that. Only Greg Norman can play with that. If you can push your intent speed, up comes your playing speed, up comes your playing speed. And Martin was spot on there, what he was saying, that Bryson, we're all watching him at the moment. He's putting up 210 ball speed, Martin, maybe higher.
Yeah, that's what I've seen, yeah.
But we don't see him playing at that. He's playing at 190 every time I've seen him. I know he's pushed a couple. And there was a bit of fun at Bay Hill the other week where he pushed a little bit more, but he has loads in the tank. So from an intent point of view that Martin's talking about is a brilliant way of producing extra speed, but you play at a lower level. And I was interested in listening to Rory. And he's good when he's interviewed Rory because he's pretty honest, really. And he was saying the other day that he believed that probably he went the wrong way in chasing Bryson for ball speed and speed. And when you're the best driver on tour like Rory is that the right thing to do? And I'm not sure Rory quite did it the right way. And he was almost trying to hit on the course with full intent. And what Martin said, full intent practice, that really knocks your numbers up. And then from a pro point of view, you play below that. Martin's different. He's going to play and hit in tournaments at full intent.
Right, because Martin has a grid where you need one on the grid, correct?
Yeah, especially what's unique in long drive, and that's the biggest difference actually to golf, is we have 6 tries. So I can actually react to my mishits, right? So you actually can, work yourself into a set, kind of, right? Because I'm happy when I'm slicing my first 2 out of bounds right, because I know how to correct that, or that's the easiest way for me to correct it. I move my ball position a bit further left, and then the ball goes straight. It's the easiest one for me. A duck hook for me is harder to correct, but that's a different story. It's a completely different approach. We also use a little bit different equipment, right? My shaft, for example, is a lot softer with a lot more torque, right? That's been one of the trending topics actually on the World Long Drive Tour over the last years, because people realized it doesn't have to be the 5X shaft all the time. It needs to be the one that fits you, fits your loading and unloading pattern, and so on and so forth. But these shafts, I'm using a shaft that actually, when I mishit it, it doesn't matter if that ball goes like 5 yards OB or 100 yards OB, right? For golf, it matters. A semi-rough ball is different to an OB ball, right? But for long drive, it doesn't matter. OB is OB. So we go to the max there and also go to the max on the grid. So it's a completely different topic. I really try to use my adrenaline to go maximum speed on on the golf course, you really try to contain your adrenaline, right? And manage it throughout the 4 hours of play. We only play 2 minutes 30.
Sorry, John, Martin, am I right that Bryson has reached out to you?
Yeah, numerous times. So, I mean, I've been posting. I mean, I'm fairly active on Instagram, right? I'm trying to educate a lot. My handle is Martin Borgmeier, and well, he's following me for a long time, and he's reached out to me whenever I've been posting some different techniques or whatever I've been doing for speed, right? Might it be impact drills, resistance drills, or when I was, for example, today I was hitting a 6-iron at 177 miles, right? I believe that was one of my fastest. And he's been reaching out here and there, and we spoke on the phone numerous times, and he was asking for a couple of techniques he wants to utilize and what I think of them. So, well, what I see is that he really embraces the fact that you can learn from long drive and what we do. You shouldn't swing as a long driver on a course, but you need to know which elements of long drive might make sense for your golf swing. And that's what Lee figured. And that's, I believe, also, Lee, how you teach and coach your students, right?
Yes, so if I was taking some long drive elements, we know that having a really long swing and other bits and pieces isn't going to suit a 70-year-old guy on a Saturday morning. But those little elements, that's very true.
So we've got the world's fastest ball speed assisting the world's fastest tour professional.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, he clocked 154 on a flight scope the other day at Augusta, and I don't think there's a lot of people on this world that have actually ever clocked 150, even the long drive guys. But there's only one in the world, that's for sure, with a major win.
Well, that should be interesting going forward, especially this summer when they get to Torrey Pines for the U.S. Open.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. And I mean, what he's actually doing is he's pushing the sport, and he's also pushing what people are doing in college right now, what the kids are doing. And I believe that's an amazing path, because what you did, or what happened over the last couple of decades, was you actually blocked a little bit of the athleticism of kids, right? And that happened to me as well when I was being taught as a kid. And now I believe more and more coaches embrace the fact that it might be useful when, well, those feet of those kids dance a little bit throughout the swing, and that's okay.
Yeah, Lucas Wald, who both of you know very well, and who has a lot of admiration for your work because we had talked about it. He's very big on what he calls dance moves, just like you alluded to. And I think you're starting to see a lot more of that in coaching. I was watching some video the other day from Augusta, and Justin Thomas on his backswing was lifting his left heel, which he has never, it's the first time I've ever been able to video him with his left heel off the ground with a driver. And I was intrigued because you alluded to Rory earlier, and Lee, I agree with you. It's surprising to me that Rory didn't keep going down that path, because he's very intelligent, he's very gifted, he seems to be a very hard worker, and for some reason I just don't think he had the right information or was going about it the right way.
No, I probably shouldn't say this, John, but pros are quite like sheep sometimes, yeah. They just follow what the good guy's doing. So whoever world number one is, or whoever's an outstanding in maybe that what they're doing, a lot of pros. I mean, I know a lot of tour players. They want to know what he's doing. If a guy comes on tour and his coach has had a lot of success with him, they all go with that coach. So I think long drivers are a bit sheep-like. They'll tend to follow what the standout man is. I don't think Bryson would particularly follow. He's very much his own man. But I think also in the last few years with strokes gained and every shot counts, the Mark Brody book, I think in bold print it's also said, you know, if you hit it further, it will lower your game. So I guess that would open their eyes a little bit more to going down that route. But it's very easy in hindsight, you know. If Rory being the best driver on the tour, if I was would I have got him to leave it alone? But I don't know. It's difficult to know unless you're in that situation. But it seems to me, stats-wise, he's sort of wedging his iron play might be where he might make some advantages on there when he's already a great driver of the ball.
Right, and it seems he's joined forces with your countryman there, Pete Cowan.
And, Pete Cowan's pretty much had success with everything. He seems to have the Midas touch. So I think Rory's too good a player to not come back. I think golf, as we know, is cyclical. Yeah, in the fact that you can be really good for 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, I was watching Dustin Johnson last year. I think he came stone cold last 80, and then shot 30 under, then won the Masters.
Go figure.
And I think, looking at Tiger Woods' famous how many cuts in a row, 160. I don't think that will ever be touched in the history of golf. I mean, normally if you have five, 6 rounds in a row where you don't miss the cut, you're playing well.
Yes, that's very true. So Martin alluded to it as well as you did. Let's talk a bit about, and John Novosel and his father created, the Tour Tempo formula. Let's talk about tempo for a minute, and as well as some of the other things that, Lee, through coaching long drive, and Martin through training and so forth, that the two of you feel are applicable from long drive, such as a gifted individual like Martin, that we can utilize with our everyday students. How do we transfer some of that great data to our teaching on a day-to-day?
Do you want me to go first, John?
Your choice.
Go ahead. Right, so I'll let Martin talk a little bit about tempo after me. So I'll just touch on it and I'll let him talk in much more detail. Martin, as he said, is a very good speed trainer. And if you do check out his Instagram page, there's some great training stuff on there for free that you'll learn a lot from. I think the tempo was interesting. And there was always this sort of myth in golf that low and slow and take the club back slow can give you a big benefit. And then 20 years ago, every long driver I watch you swinging the club back 100 quicker than my downswing. So you can hear it whooshing on the way back. So I think you want to get energy out to the club quickly. I think swinging back quickly. I know Bryson's takeaway has increased its speed dramatically. Then you get this to the top of the backswing. There's a better stretch across the system. You're getting greater muscle activity. There's outliers, Matsuyama stops at the top. We know there's outliers, but we've got to look at commonalities. And most of the fast guys do not move the club back slow. Most of the fast guys don't move the club back slowly. As far as, you asked me what you could bring from long drive, there's many things you can't bring. I wouldn't recommend everyone, I've got this kiddies club swinging it around there. I wouldn't have a cut wrist at the top like a lot of long drive guys. It doesn't pour on tour. But many things could do. How you move your weight correctly, getting a decent stretch across the segments of your legs and your upper body, your shoulders and your wrists. I think all that can be taken on. I think improving a bit of mobility, trying to get your hand path a little bit longer. You can take snippets along drive. For old people like me, maybe lifting the heel up a little bit. I think for most over 40-year-olds, coming into your teaching bay would help a little bit. So I could go on endlessly with a list of things, John. There are many little bits that you could give to a player on the lesson tee, which will help them hit it further. But in your mind as a coach, you want to give them the thing that you think would be least invasive to spoiling their game.
And to follow up with that, Lee, and you and I have talked somewhat about this while we were creating these outlines for today. You're not opposed to experimenting to see where it takes you with your players, are you?
No. It's funny when you're teaching, John. I probably for each problem, I've probably got 20 different ways to solve it, and I've got my favourite 5, yeah. And I'll sort of work through them if number 1 doesn't work. But occasionally, we spoke about this the other week. I'll go down an avenue, and this is important for me at the beginning when I measure, check, and video. When they're swinging it really well, because a lot of times you video when they're not swinging it well, that you know what works. And I've gone down the avenue where after 5 minutes, I think this isn't good, this isn't working. And as a young coach, I probably would have kept going because I was too embarrassed to say, I think I've talked a load of rubbish there. Can we get, and I said to you the other week, it's a 5-minute refund. Let's stop now. What I've told you to do isn't working. Please stop. It didn't happen. Let's attack it from another way. So I've tried many things that don't work, John, like we all have. And I guess the experience of the coach comes from the fact that I made a million mistakes. And I said earlier, I just make fewer mistakes than I used to.
Well, I'm glad to see you're improving, Lee.
Thank you. I only make 25% mistakes now.
Well, you had all this time off to think about it, right? Now you're back to work, and we expect less mistakes. Yeah, I think that's really important, that as a coach, you're not always going to pull the right formula out of the bag.
No.
And if that formula is not working, you'll have to be, a big enough person to be honest with your student and exchange the formula.
Yeah, they'll thank you more for it than going down a nightmare a few weeks to the next lesson if you give them bad info.
Now, Martin, you had talked about tempo earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, John Novosel, who's probably talking later, right, is an expert in that area. But
he's in the queue right now. He'll
perfect. So he's listening when I talk about his topic. That's perfect. So he can correct me afterwards. But what I figured as well, so what he's been doing is he figured that most swings also on tour strive to be in a 3-to-1 ratio. So that's the ratio between backswing and downswing, right?
Like a 24-8, a 21-7.
Exactly. That's the frames basically he's measuring.
Correct.
So what that means mathematically or logically is the faster your backswing, the faster your downswing. And that's basically about it. And I figured when I was practicing tempo or practicing to swing faster or have a faster, quicker tempo, actually what helped me the most is to speed up that very first bit, what I was saying earlier as well. So that very first bit, that take away. So when I throw that away, that really helps to go through the whole system. So that initial speed turns out to be speed at impact. And that's really what helped me or completely change the swing, because it's not only the ratio that makes the swing faster, but, and John is gonna present that in more detail, it's gonna load all the different body parts, because it's that's logical, right? When I turn my torso right here, I can move further when I'm doing it quicker, right? So that makes sense. And
so there's momentum there.
Exactly. And that addresses all the body parts, right? That is torso, that is hips, that is wrists, that is everything. And it's a lot easier for me to find the right position, or that extreme long drive position at the top of my backswing when I swing back faster.
And Martin, are you utilizing a 3-to-1 with your competing swing?
So it's actually, and John's been measuring those. It actually goes through all my swings. So for all my full swings, whatever it might be, a 9-iron or a driver, it's always 3-to-1.
Okay,
so
that's interesting.
That's interesting because I do that automatically. I mean, I don't think like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's not what I think when
you've trained that though.
Exactly. It simply happens. So the body adapts to do it. And that's really interesting. And
because now it's part of your neuromuscular pattern, part of your central nervous system. Which is
I'm not quite sure what happened to my brain, but that's probably it. Yeah.
A lockdown to think would help, right? Martin, what are your numbers time wise? Your takeaway to your impact? Backswing, downswing. You say you're 3-to-1. Do you have a measurement of time?
I do. I don't know the number, but I do have a couple of measurements from gears or different 3D systems that measured it. But I could do it on a video, but I've actually never thought about it. Lee, do you know the number?
I know for most people it's a second. John actually will probably better answer that. I know it's normally about a second from the club leaving the ball to hitting it. And I know that varies. I know that your tempo is at 18.6. I just see John texting up. He's got it. So he will give you that little nugget.
1.66. There we go.
Yeah, I thought, when I watch all the swings there, especially on Instagram, I was thinking 18.6 would be probably in the ballpark, right? That's your 3-to-1, which is quick. But then again, you've been able to train that.
Yeah, for that world record ball I've been hitting. So one of the fastest swings I've ever done. It was actually 15.5, I guess, what John said.
15.5.
15.5. That's what he stated on his presentation. So he's going to tell you more in detail probably later. But
I couldn't go that fast in my car.
You need a German car then.
I do. Yeah.
And an Autobahn.
Yeah, and an Autobahn. Right. And no wonder you're fast. Your whole culture is fast over there on that Autobahn.
That's true, but
That's
most
it.
are limited anyways.
Yeah, you should be the story. You should have the fastest people in the world, right, swinging golf clubs. Martin, could you do me a favor? I'd like to ask you a question about, and would require you getting out of your chair if you would, because this is something I think is of a lot of interest, and I know Lucas has talked about it, and but if you would, could you stand up for us, please?
Yeah, sure.
All right, and then if you could just back up so we could see your feet. Right. So then I was watching one of your Instagrams, right? And what you do there is you're somewhat flared out at your address position and you go into your backswing, right?
You mean that move I'm doing? Well, loading to the right?
No, if you would just, you go to the top of your swing, you lift your left leg, your left foot, right? And then when you come down, instead of your foot being flared, it's squared, just like that. Yes, sir. That's exactly it.
Okay. You mean, so I'm going from this position to when I stomp down that position, and that's exactly right.
That's something I see, and what Lucas has talked about, and I have some video, a YouTube video of Lucas doing it, and I'm going to ask him to further elaborate. But I know you went into that, you actually drew some red lines and talked about your footwork there, which you alluded to earlier. Could you explain what's going on there? Because obviously that's something that's very key to your success.
Yeah, that's actually a matter of ground reaction force, right? And how you apply it, because the ground reaction force is actually the force of in the opposite direction of where you apply the force, right? And you really want to efficiently, I always describe it that way. So in my mind, what I do is my swing is a gear wheel right here. And what I try to do is I try to speed up that gear, right? And how do you do that? Where do you want to push a gear when you want to speed it up? So imagine this is a gear right here. I would push in this direction, and that's 3D. It's always a little tough to show in the video, but I'm moving this direction. And to apply or to create a ground reaction force in that direction, you need to apply a force downwards in a certain direction, right? And there's different forces, and obviously I've learned this from Lee. It's three-dimensional. So the force you apply downwards is three-dimensional. And that is simply just one part of it, right? Moving that way, then plus exploding up, and then there's a total heel force as well. And I believe, Lee, you want to go into more detail, right?
Yeah, Lucas can go into that as well. Also from a positioning of the joints in your foot and your leg, it would help to use the muscles. So I would be interested in how ground reaction forces work, but also I'm very interested very much above the ground, because it's the muscles applying force on the ground that produce those action forces. So that position of the left heel stepping outwards can position the foot, the ankle, the leg in an optimum way to produce power. So I'm thinking how the muscles work, and then that produces the force into the ground.
Yeah, what I think is interesting there, and looking at video of very good ball strikers, very good tour players in the past, and Lucas has gone into this in quite in depth, and I'm intrigued by it because like a Sam Snead does this. Now, obviously Sam didn't have anything to measure. Sam figured it out with his athleticism, which he was a very gifted athlete. He was a boxer, he was a baseball player, he was a tennis player. And when he was living, I had talked to him about this. So he was very gifted athletically, but he figured that out in his swing without all the technology we have. And then I saw Martin was talking about it. Lucas has talked about it. Rory does it to a degree. Some players do it more than others. So it's a very stabilizing motion. And to me, it looks like it keeps the pelvis and the left leg from spinning out too early. It seems to separate those. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's just a great sequence in the position of your legs and your hips. Probably it's not such a great iron move, and it's more of a driver move. And right. going back to the greats, and I'm in agreement with Lucas here, is that a lot of those people, the terrible things, a lot of those people were untainted by instruction, and they just figured it out. And they found the optimum way to move. They found out through trial and error what worked the best. And many kids do this. Many children have these same foot movements that unfortunately, at some periods have been coached out of them. But I would always have taken the view over the years. And when I first got into long drive, and I thought, that looks a bit strange. That looks a bit strange. And over the years, it makes sense because they're trying to move their body in an optimum way to produce speed. So Snead just worked it out, and one of the greatest drivers of all time, and longevity-wise, I think he won in as many decades as anyone. Yes.
He, I think he may be one of the oldest winners on the PGA Tour.
I think that might well be true.
I think he won in his 50s at the Greenbrier, which I'd have to check, but I believe he was 54, 55 when he won there, right? Yeah. And that's interesting what you say, because, and I know Lucas has an issue with this as well, is teaching the athleticism out of a golf swing. And Lucas sees a lot of people because he's very successful with what he does. And so he teaches it back in, which I find interesting, because the only two people that I've ever seen with this little dance move with the foot are Lucas and Martin. And I thought it was kind of interesting that they'd end up on the same program on the same day, both who are very accomplished at creating speed and distance.
And I think, which might be part of this sort of conversation, John, how long drive might be relevant to the average person and the tour player. I think in the last few years, this sort of distance through resistance, quiet legs, is just drifting away a little bit. The coaching has phases or trendy bits that they'll go through, yeah? And you said you saw Justin Thomas with his heel up. Now he's left foot skipping away. Patrick Reed's left foot skipping away. And what you start to do, if you start looking for it on tour, you'll see more and more people doing it. And I think coaches these days are very much more willing to leave that alone and see it as a byproduct of great movement, and something that should be embraced, not cut off straight away.
Yes, definitely, because as Martin alluded to earlier, a student brings a certain amount of athleticism to the tee, usually not as much as we'd like, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to start removing it.
No,
Yeah.
very true. And even myself, I don't play so much golf because my back's not so good these days. But I probably had a fair bit of the athleticism coached out of me by trying to keep the same flex in my knees as a 20-year-old pro, and it probably didn't do me any favors.
So Lee, when what have you taken from long drive, and like when you're working with people like Martin, that let's say you have a 55-year-old man comes to the practice tee. He's got, 85 to 90 miles an hour club head speed with a driver, not physically gifted, not, maybe not as flexible as you'd like. What are you going to do with somebody like that? What are some of the things that, that you've seen with Martin that you could take from Martin's swing and give to this gentleman?
Well, if we just took it on the idea of Martin, I mean, 99.9% of the people who walk in my studio haven't got his body, yeah. So there are many things I can't take from Martin, yeah. What you can take though are small snippets of it, and even if you went down a slight journey of that. So, for instance, someone in the age group you said, I'm definitely probably going to consider letting their left heel come up. I'm definitely going to consider letting their left knee drift in behind the ball. I might try and get them to move a bit longer. So if I allow their heel to come up, that might allow their hips to move more. Then you can get more upper body turn. I might try and get their arm as far as they can, but I might offer a little bit of elbow softness that Martin's got. So you could take many things from those, but obviously you have to take it within the person that their body might not let them do some of those things.
All right. And what is it that gives you the impression that you can give me 10 miles an hour more club head speed?
Probably because you're not working on enough of the things you need to work on. So when you come in, you'll normally find that there's one bit that the person's missing, and it could be their swing technique, it could be their body, it could be the way they're using their feet and interacting with the floor, and generally through a little bit of hard work. As I said, most people who come in, the pros maybe are the more difficult ones in that they're performing near their elite level anyway. But for your average man or woman, they're leaving generally a chunk out that they're not using.
And what about from Martin? where is Martin in his quest? I mean, obviously he is world class. He's created the fastest ball speed ever. I've got to believe with his work ethic and how he trains, and during this whole pandemic, he's continued to train as if he's competing. So I got the impression he hasn't seen the ceiling yet. What do you think?
Well, 160 club head speed. Joe Miller's got up to 157 in the tournament in the UK. Martin's been up at about 156. So 160 in the next 10 years will probably be touched. Martin's got a little bit more in the tank, definitely clubhead ball speed wise. I guess Martin's dilemma at the moment with COVID, he hasn't competed for the last 2 years. Yeah. So his excellent product at the moment, he hasn't tested it under fire. So I think the clever thing for us to do, he's so good at the moment. Let's see if it works. And this is the same as tournament golf. Let's see if it works. If he comes out next year as the best long driver on the planet, John, we might be leaving it all alone.
Yeah, an event would be great, to be honest with you. And can I get back to your question regarding the 80-year-old? Because I have some 80-year-olds in my studio quite regularly doing speed training.
Interesting.
If that's okay. Yeah. So
yeah,
what I do, I
do.
can show, if you want to, I can show you what I'm doing with them and what actually helps. So I mean, people are obsessed by the speed sticks, right? Since I don't know, I believe it was Phil Mickelson who had them in the bag for the very first time, and then it was all over the media and so on and so forth. So there's different products out there. I'm using this one, whatever you want. It's always the same principle. What this does is it actually increases your club head speed by doing overspeed training. That's the whole idea about it, right? You're swinging something lighter and something with less air resistance. But there's people out there, obviously, that say that this hurts your sequence a little bit, right? That's why you really have to use them wisely, in my opinion. They're not necessary. It's one of the products that is out there, but it's not speed training alone. But what I do with these guys most of the time is I make them swing a speed stick with better technique. And that's actually exactly what Lee just said. I make them move right? I make them load their right leg, right? I let the left knee come in, and so on and so forth. And I actually practice these power moves with the speed sticks, because speed training is not technique training, but I believe you can practice the power moves and you can practice the power technique. And that's actually something you can do with these, and that can actually increase or improve your sequence and not kill it, right? And then what's really important, what I do with all of these guys is actually impact training, and that's for that I'm using some of the products that John Novosel has to offer as well. So what I'm doing is I have these impact pads right here that I use with a kickstand. So I set them up. So there's a little Velcro on here, and set the pad up like this. Then there's a little tail on the pad as well that adds a little extra resistance, and you can use that as a visual as well. And then on this speedball right here, there's some Velcro as well. So you could use your old driver or your own driver or whatever as well, put some Velcro on it. But what's important in terms of speed training, and you can actually combine the two, the use right, prime yourself with a stick, then hit it. But important for speed training in general is hitting something. Because I believe the transition from sticks when you swing something very fast, or from your own driver when you hit it very fast, when you hit fresh air, to a ball can be very tough, right? So I believe this, hitting something with maximum intent, can actually be a great transition to speed training or to hitting a ball. Because I've seen people swing speed sticks, then like 5 minutes there, they want to hit a ball, and I'm serious, there's been European Tour pros in my cave right here, and they hit a driver 1 yard, and I'm not kidding. They barely touched the ball and it fell off the tee. It happened, and they're European Tour pros. And then I adapted a little bit here and there, and what I've seen, what I've been fairly successful with, is doing a transition to these pads actually, or from these pads to a golf ball. So you hit that also with maximum intent, but you cannot miss it. And your body is not busy squaring the face as much and hitting a golf ball at the right place or at the right impact location, but hitting something. Plus, your body reacts differently when you hit something. So I've been discussing this with John quite a lot. So he was telling me, and that absolutely makes sense. When you're boxing and you're punching fresh air, That's completely different to hitting an object, right? And your body will react differently. All the muscles will contract before you actually hit something, and that's exactly the same when you hit a pad. When you video that, the swing looks completely different. With speed sticks all the time, you see this, or when you hit fresh air, right? This, because you cannot, well, decelerate the club head as efficiently as when you're hitting something, because it decelerates that itself. So I hit that, and what's happening as well is this sticks to the club face right here. So what's happening as well is you drag some extra resistance through air after impact, right? Move this way. So it makes you work even harder after impact, and that can help your deceleration pattern as well, because that's a whole nother topic, deceleration, because when you work on that, the more efficient you can decelerate the club after impact, the more your body will allow you to swing faster. So
yeah, I like that a lot. I think that'll be wonderful to have, like in my case, I do a lot of indoor academy training in the city, or to have it out at the practice facility on the driving range, because I like the idea of the decel and the impact, because like you said, you know, the central nervous system knows impact. You know, your brain knows impact, which is what you're going to get with a golf ball. Makes a lot of sense to get back.
Yeah, to get back to the 80-year-old, he's actually been 83. His name is Manfred. He's now living in South Africa, by the way. But he had such a blast smashing something. And once you make these guys move faster and intentionally hitting something as fast as they can, I believe that's, I don't know if that's completely independent to age, probably a lot less when you're older, but I still saw effects when I was doing this with them, because it unlocked a little extra speed, because they've never done it before. They've never hit anything as fast as they can. And when you combine that with the power moves with a stick and some tempo training as well, and you say like smash the pad as fast as you can, swing the club back as fast as you can, and smash it, you can seriously easily increase that club speed by 5 miles per hour, 6-7 miles per hour in one session. So I've seen that, and I don't see that age really makes that much of a difference.
Super, I appreciate it. Lee, Martin, we've come to Lucas Wald here. He and John are be coming on. I'd like to thank you both very much. It's been great having you. Lee, certainly appreciate all the time and effort we've gone over the last 5 or 6 weeks putting the outlines together and getting our Zoom calls. I miss our Thursday Zoom calls. I'm glad we got one in today.
We'll keep them going, John, yeah.
We will do that, and I will be in touch. Martin, all the best with the baby. I hope you start to get 4 hours of sleep soon. And
working on it.
And we're going to share your information, your websites, as well as your Instagram. And I follow Lee on Twitter and Instagram as well. So we're going to share that with all the attendees. We can't thank you enough. So, you know.
Thank you very much. Have a good one, yeah.
Right. And Martin, best wishes. We hope Germany gets back to normal as soon as possible. And Lee, you keep working.
Thanks, John.
Hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
All right.
Cheers,
great.
Bye.
Best wishes. All right, so segment 1 in, we got Lucas Wald, who I alluded to earlier, coming up here with John Novosel. You may know John Novosel and his father, John Novosel Sr., because they have done the Tour Tempo, which is the formula of frames based on work they've done with PGA Tour players. There's John. And Lucas I've known for probably 12 to 14 years. Lucas and I first met through Kelvin Mirahara out in Hawaii. Kelvin is, as some of you may know, did a lot of speed training and had a Phantom camera and did a lot of work on what he called micro moves. And Lucas trained with Kelvin, and then he took all of his information and has moved that forward. And then he has teamed up with John, and they actually do schools where they do speed and sequence sessions, which I'm a big believer in. So without further ado, Lucas, welcome from Florida, right?
Tampa, Florida.
There you go. And John, you're out in Kansas City?
Yeah, Lawrence, Kansas, home of the Jayhawks.
There you go. Martin Martin's calling you for more information.
I know, he's just somebody who's
I can't wait to see Martin hit 160. That was just good. I was getting excited when they were talking about 160 club head speed. That was fun.
Yeah, it is off the charts. He is he's quite the innovator. He loves to tinker. He loves to measure. You know, I had some great conversations with him getting ready for this forum, and it's amazing to me how much energy and time he puts into all of his training. And Incredible. He's like he's on lockdown, but he's, you know, you would think that he's going to be competing next week. That's the intensity he brings to it.
Love it. Love
it. He was telling me about all the different golf balls that he's able to explode with his club head speed. And I said, what do you mean explode? He said, you know, explode.
I don't think I've ever done that.
And I said, yeah, I said, yeah, that's not something I could relate to very well.
Awesome. So, I enjoyed listening to those guys. I tuned in John Hobbins the last probably 10, 15 minutes. It was great.
Yeah, it's, you know, Lee has been doing this for 20 years, right? And fell into it because, you know, of Joe's father, actually, you know, who wanted to get Joe into long drive, and then Joe since become a two-time world champion. And so I thought it was interesting because when I first asked him about it, he said, yeah, I was sitting in the car the way home and said, I don't know anything about speed. And he said, back then you didn't, you know, 20 years ago, you didn't have the information that you guys have today. Right. And there wasn't any resource as such. He said there were a handful of people around the world. So he found out who those people were, and he started calling them because there was no access to the internet the way it is today. So yeah. I think it's interesting of his, you know, he's probably been on the speed journey as long as anybody, right?
Yeah.
Sure, and with a lot of success worldwide. And John, Martin loves your products. We were talking before the session started how he works with all your different products in his part of his speed training. And what I thought was very interesting for us to hear was that Lee obviously is very much into the sequence training, which Lucas does a very good job of with his players and in his website. And then John, you go ahead and you do the speed training to combine. So you're giving somebody a fitter body to work with Lucas and getting better sequencing. So what I'd like to do is, Lucas, you had worked with somebody we call Fast Eddie Fernandez, right? And who is a Masters World Long Drive champion who has club speed in excess of 150 miles per hour. So you've kind of gone on that path with creating speed and World Long Drive champions. And then you have successfully morphed into teaching the everyday player like myself how I might be able to gain 8 to 10 miles an hour more speed. And I was looking at a post you had of a gentleman that you were working with down at Black Diamond there, who I think had 11 miles an hour increase in speed. So much to Lee's point, speed can be learned. Could you talk to us about that?
Yeah, you know, John, so I mean, my journey again started not in long drive. I was a player first and foremost, and I couldn't, you know, I didn't hit it well enough to compete at the highest level, but I had some success, won a state open, you know, played some PGA Tour events. But, you know, after stopping competing full time in 2009, I had to figure this out. I had to go back. I wanted to know why. I grew up with John Daly. John Daly and I played a lot of golf. I used to ask JD.
You're from Arkansas,
correct? From Arkansas. I would sit behind John Daly and watch him hit balls for hours and say, you know, how are you doing this? How are you tapping into this? We would throw a football, play ping pong, and Daly wasn't a great athlete. He tapped into a set of movements that I just quite frankly didn't understand. And when I would ask him to explain to me these movements, he couldn't do it. And rightfully so, he learned as a kid. So he picked up, his dad gave him a cartoon cutout sequence of Nicklaus as a young boy. And he basically practiced mimicking Jack Nicklaus's swing, which a lot of people don't know that about John Daly. But of course he had a long swing, but if you look at the movements, they're very similar to Nicklaus. So that propelled me when I stopped playing to basically I've got to go back and study the best men and women golf swings throughout the history of the game and figure out, are there commonalities? Is there, could I tease out the commonalities of all these swings and train it in myself first and foremost before I teach it to others? And that's what I spent a decade pretty much doing. A lot of trial and error, a lot of video. I mean, now everyone has a high-speed camera right in their pocket, a video cell phone.
Sure.
We didn't, we taught, you guys alluded to that earlier. 10 years ago, we didn't have like access to what we do now. Now we have YouTube, we have all the technology that gives us access to all this information. So I sort of just collected a library of swings from, McDonald Smith, early 1900s, Hogan, Snead in the 40s, 50s, Nicklaus in the 70s, Greg Norman in the 90s, Tiger 2000s. And then, I looked at a lot of the modern guys who were dominant and powerful: Bubba Watson, Dustin Johnson, Rory. So I broke, and the women, you go back to Mickey Wright, Louise Suggs, Patty Berg, great swings. Obviously a young Michelle Wie. So finding and figuring out what the commonalities were of all those great swings, that was my goal number one. And goal number two, could I train it? Could I figure out how to take all those movements and get them into my body? And then, create speed. That alone allowed me to go from 105 miles per hour to now 120. And then I took sort of that blueprint and I applied it to Eddie Fernandez, to Tim Willis, who I'm staying at his house right now, who you just mentioned went from 94 miles per hour to 105, and he's bombing 162, 163 mile per hour ball speed. It's incredible.
Lucas,
it's 64. Yeah.
Tim is 64 years old.
64.
Yeah, I was really impressed by that work that man has put in.
Yeah, you saw the little cutout sequence, the before and after, right?
I did.
Incredible.
I did. That was very impressive for somebody to pick up that much speed.
And what we do, how many balls we hit on the driving range, John? Very, very few. We train. He has a garage set up. We have mirrors. We have a net. We have birdie balls. I don't know if you know what that is, but they're little plastic balls that we hit into a net. So we're constantly refining this stuff and training at super slow speeds. And that's, I'm not a brain scientist, but I read a lot about training when I started this. And I leaned on Anders Ericsson, who wrote the book Peak, or Malcolm Gladwell books. These performance scientists who talk about how you learn and master skills of all kinds, not just the golf swing, but there is a common theme to this stuff. And it's about breaking things down slowly, chunking it together, mastering these movements at slow speeds. I don't care if you're learning piano, which I'm starting to play piano right now, and it's ironic.
And doing quite well. I saw your recital the other day.
And so that was 2 weeks of practice, but I took on systematically learning the piano the same way that Tim and I are training in his garage. We're doing things very slowly and mastering it at slow speeds before we integrate. And, each morning we go out to the garage and we train for about 15 minutes. So these are short, intent, and these performance scientists call this type of practice deliberate practice, which basically you train really hard and for brief periods of time, maybe like 15, 20 minutes, and then you leave it. And then you come back later and you do it again. And that's what I did with piano. I didn't sit down and play Beethoven on day one. I mean, you heard my Ode to Joy piece, right?
I did.
And I was
impressed.
Right. And I'm not a pianist, but I wanted to play Ode to Joy, and it was painstaking, but I again trained the way the performance scientists talk about. I chunked it up. I learned individual notes. I trained in short sessions, and after 2 weeks of doing that, it's not too bad, really. And so that, you ask how Tim and I did that, we did the same thing, John. We trained for really intense short sessions, and he practiced at super slow speeds. And then now we see the sequencing happening at faster speeds out on the golf course. And then we'll pick apart what's going on. We go back to the garage, we go back to the range, and then we go, test it on the golf course.
So you're doing a lot of, could we call it slow motion training or slow motion training? Show us something show us at the speed you're doing this with, Tim. Can you do that?
Yeah. Let me. I've got these headphones plugged in. Let me see. I don't know how good this is, but can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. I don't know if you can't see my feet though, or I can't see my feet on the.
No, we just have your upper body. We just want to give everybody an idea of when you say slow. What is slow to you?
We break it up. We'll do with the birdie ball. We will do the leg work, the trigger, the process to shaft parallel. We will sometimes go this slow just to shaft parallel. A little trigger to here, and we'll make sure that everything is in order to basically shaft parallel. And that there's a lot going on just to get there. And then we'll break it down from shaft parallel to basically lead arm parallel. And then from there, we'll break it down from lead arm parallel to the top. And then from there, we'll go back to lead arm parallel and then basically to impact. And then
you're breaking it down into 5 or 6 segments.
100%, chunking it up, just like I learned the piano, chunking it up all the time. We do that. And then we'll slowly go through that without pausing, one continuous motion. So we'll go a little trigger, lead shaft parallel, lead arm parallel, top of the backswing, back to lead arm, shaft parallel, impact. And we'll do that over and over again. And that's sort of how he's able to take that and now hit a golf ball at 105 miles per hour. It does work. It does work, but it's nothing new. There's no magic. It's the way people learn and skills of all kinds.
Right. It's just, you're doing something in golf that very few people have done by chunking it, as you call it, and also doing the slow motion training. So, which gets back to, you can't do something quickly that you can't do slowly.
Right. And that's, I made my biggest advances in my own swing when I started training this way. A lot of it early on, you mentioned Kelvin, and Kelvin was great. He taught me a vernacular, used anatomical terms to describe the motion. And I started learning this stuff. However, I still couldn't apply it. So I knew what internal rotation was, or abduction, or supination, pronation. I could describe all this stuff, but I still, was like esoterically speaking, I needed to be able to get it into my body. And so that's when I was like, well, who am I going to use as a model? And for me personally, I use Jamie Sedlowski as a model because I was built similarly to Jamie. And so I started breaking this stuff down and I imitated a lot of his moves and I practiced sort of those movements in my own self. But I used that slow motion training, John, to create my own swing transformation. And that's when I started reading about these performance scientists. I'm like, well, that's the way you learn the violin, or that's the way you learn a foreign language, or that's the way you learn to play the piano. It's all related. And so, but you need to know the sequencing. And that's, again, like Novacell and I do the same thing in our schools. We take people in on day one, we look at their swings, we break it down, and then we work at this stuff at slow speeds before adding speeds. And that's what I did, talked about Eddie Fernandez earlier. I mean, that's exactly what when Eddie came to me, his angle of attack was like negative. I think he averaged like -1 to 2 hitting down on it. Right. Driver. And with long drive, we need to hit up on it.
Right.
So, exactly. How can you tell him to hit up on it? Well, we did that through proper sequencing. And then once we got the sequencing down, that number sort of just went up. It went up to +4 and 5. I didn't tell him to hit up on it 4 or 5. The sequencing allowed him to get that.
Right. I think that's, if there are things that are missing in golf instruction, I think that is part of it. I've been fortunate enough here in the New York area that I've had the opportunity to work with some gentlemen and a lady actually who is a neuroscientist, and a couple of them are active with brain operations, right? They operate on the brain. So I've had these discussions with them, and basically they just look at me like, well, what did you expect? Where do you think everything comes from? It comes from your brain. It comes from your neuromuscular pattern. It comes from your central nervous system. and one of the favorite things somebody told me was like, because we get cold here in New York. And so somebody said, why do you think on a cold day, if you put your hat on, that your fingers and your feet stay warmer? And I was like, I have no idea. Why do they? And they said, well, on a cold day, if the brain's warm, it leaves the fingers and the feet alone. But if the brain feels cold, it goes and steals the heat from the other parts of the body because it really doesn't care how they feel. It's interested in preservation. So they said, if you train your brain, because we were talking about the golf swing, and I was showing them some things, and they said, this is just brain training is all it is, and that's what you're doing. But you've broken it down into, if you will, the Lucas Wald science of brain training by your chunking methods.
Right. And so I think you hit on a good word. And again, I recommend everyone on this call to check out the book Peak by Anders Ericsson, because he goes into what he calls mental representations. And so developing the proper mental representations is paramount if you want to achieve mastery in any skill set. And so watching what I do a lot with kids, we can talk about the difference in training kids versus adults, but I have kids just watch a lot of video of Snead, of Hogan, of Rory McIlroy, of who they want to imitate. And that's, that develops, we can get into, mirror neurons, but the brain needs those mental representations so that you can start firing up these patterns in the mind of what we're seeing, the mental visualization exercises that we're seeing. So the more you watch, the more it's going to get into your body. That's why when you watch the father-son golf tournament, the sons oftentimes swing just like the dads, right? Because they've seen, their father swing a bunch of, like if you watch the Stadlers, I know often physiologically the son's built like the father, but they all, they swing just like the dad too. So that because they've developed these mental representations for year after year after year, watching the father swing. So, in my opinion, sit down a kid, let them watch videos of, I think it was, who was it? Larry Nelson, I think, that learned this way, John. Do you know that story, Hobbins? I think it was Larry Nelson. I don't think he started golf until age 19.
Yeah, and Larry Nelson was he actually got serious about golf when he came back. He had served in the Vietnam War. And
yeah, he was older.
Yes. And he did not have that youth aspect that you see today. And obviously he matured earlier as a professional. And it's interesting you bring him up because I got to see him at one of the U.S. Opens and in Pittsburgh at Oakmont. And Larry Nelson to me was the epitome of a grinder. He learned his motion. Like the Hogan book had a big influence on him. And he just went and he talked about it. I had the opportunity to sit down with him, years later, because he was always one of my favorite players. And he just said that he modeled, is what he modeled his swing after some of the great swings that
he watched a lot of video. I'm pretty sure that he sat in a room and just watched video after video, and they put it on a projector, and he just imitated. He imitated the greats. And that's what I would have any kid do. I think adults tend to intellectualize things a little bit more. And right. So they need the full explanation. Kids can fill in the gaps sometimes. If like I alluded to earlier, John Daly, his dad just gave him a sequence cut out of Nicklaus and said, hey, just copy this. And, he filled in some of those gaps. But I think adults like Mr. Willis, who I'm training with now, we had to break things down from the very start to the finish, everything he wanted to know. And that's sort of the difference between training kids and training adults. I think they're two different entities altogether.
What do you find when, obviously you do things a little bit differently, right?
I do. Yeah.
I think that somebody who's going to come to train with you and John is already bought into the idea that it's not going to be your typical golf lesson. I'm not going to go down there and I'm going to pound, 100 golf balls for an hour.
Yeah, right? My approach. I mean, I get people off the driving range, detach from the outcome. I think it's, golfers are really not improving over the last 10 years. Scores aren't really lowering. I think first and foremost, get off the driving range, get in the garage, get some mirrors, set up a camera face on down the line, train and practice at slow speeds. But again, you need someone like Novosel, like myself. It sounds like Lee, I mean, from what I heard Lee Cox saying, he was spot on. I mean, from a movement standpoint, but you need a movement analyst to take you through the proper sequencing so that then you can develop the proper mental representation so that you can practice this stuff on your own. And you can spend the time like I have spent learning the piano, chunking it up, practicing at slow speeds, mastering it at slow speeds, and then integrating. But you definitely need a movement analyst to help you get from A to Z for sure in the initial stages of your development. If you really are serious about training and increasing club head speed, or not just club head speed, but if you're serious about training, changing your the blueprint, the DNA of your golf swing, it's not easy. And that's given a 1 hour golf lesson, yes, you can band-aid a few things, but if you're really wanting to make meaningful, lasting change, it does require work. It's no different than learning an instrument or foreign language. It's a process. It takes a little bit of time. But as you saw, like in the post I did with Tim Willis, it can happen. We saw it with Tim. We see it with Eddie Fernandez. We see it in Lucas Wall. I see it day after day with students who have committed to this process.
Yeah, what I think is interesting about what Lee has done, Lee started teaching long drive before he knew how to teach long drive. So he was on a fast curve to learn. And he's put together brilliant information to be so successful as he is. And what I particularly like about Lee is that he's very modest and very humble about what he's achieved. And then, and so he goes from 1 hour working with somebody like a Martin, and the next hour he might be working with somebody that can't break 100, right? And catching the outside of the bags and his training and everything. But much like yourself, he's figured out a formula. And the formula works. And it's interesting because, Lee used the word sequencing a lot, which is just what you do, right?
Yes.
And so not that we like to put people into camps, but do you have a model? Well, yes, you do have a model, right? It's a sequence model. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say. And again, like everyone's physiological, you're going to look a little different. But again, I focus on the engine of the golf swing, the way the middle moves, the way the hips move. I don't care. Like, again, I've used this analogy about the Ferrari. I focus on the Ferrari engine. I don't care if you paint it canary yellow or cherry red, but the engine is what I'm after. And if you can do that and have someone teach you how to move the engine and start developing that Ferrari, you can see some incredible. It blows me away to play golf yesterday with Tim Willis and see him at 64 hitting drives within 20 yards of me. I'm like, oh my God, like this is, it's incredible to me. So, and he's just blown away by it as well. And I know Novosel, we both see that at our golf schools, and just sometimes we're shocked by it, to be honest.
Okay. So question that came up in the queue here, Lucas, was like, how would you train a student, right, who has a very steep angle of attack due to their body structure, their grip style? Obviously you're trying to change that angle of attack, right? So you would go about this in what manner? Again,
well, I'll just use Eddie. So Eddie had a steep angle of attack. He was -1 to 2 on average, and he was hitting low rising spinners, just up shooting spinners. And I was just like, I showed him on video, which I can share my screen and go over some of this, but basically at impact, his lead hip was out over the foot. So he had the axis of rotation for Eddie was just off. He had too much lateral slide. And so we had to fix transition. And then we also had to improve the backswing. So these moves are mutually reinforcing. To work on the downswing without having a proper backswing, in my opinion, is sort of futile. So let's get the backswing down. That will improve transition. And then once you improve transition, it will help you improve your impact interval. And that's what I did with Eddie. It's like, well, just me telling him to lean back and hit up on it that wasn't good enough. It's like we had the backswing was off a little bit too. So we trained that at slow speeds, the backswing, transition, and impact. And then we sped it up and sped it up and sped it up until basically he could swing just from the subconscious and not think, you know, the way I'm playing piano a little bit without thinking. But it takes a lot of pretty arduous training to get to that point to where you can just go and let go and swing freely, like you see in Martin. I mean, Martin, I'd love to ask him this. When he's swinging 100, I don't know if he's still on here, but when he's swinging 150 something miles per hour, I'd like to know what he's thinking about. And I probably know the answer is nothing. It's probably just going ballistic and like just swinging as fast as he can.
Well,
but
he's doing it in a little over a half a second, so there can't be too much going on.
Too much thought, right. And so that's that's what I would do. Someone's angle of attack, I would address. We would sit down, go over the blueprint, go over the sequencing, and then try to train at slow speeds and make it look correct at slow speeds before we added speed.
So we're going to train at slow speeds to have an angle of attack that's more shallow.
Correct.
Because until and that's the big thing that I think gets lost on a lot of us, and we're finding more and more about it, is that, and you mentioned it, when Eddie could do it subconsciously, is that these patterns are the same reason I can tie my shoes right-handed, but I can't tie them left-handed. That I can write my name right-handed, but I can't write it left-handed, right? Because I've never trained that. Correct. Which I thought was interesting about Bryson, that he can write his name backwards.
I bet he's trained it.
No, and I think he's trained it because it was something that no other tour player could do. Right?
Well, what's interesting. What's the receiver in the NFL? Beckham, Odell. Is it Odell Beckham?
Odell Beckham Jr.
Does that sound right? He does a lot of things like brushing his teeth with the opposite hand. He'll brush his teeth with his left hand. He'll make himself do things with the opposite hand so that when the ball's coming to him, he can have sort of this dexterity to grab it with his left hand and not have a bias with his right hand. So, I mean, he's doing things in everyday life to do that. And so similarly, I didn't know Bryson practiced writing his name backwards, but, challenging yourself to do things like that with the opposite side of the body that you're used to and the opposite side of the brain, I think is fantastic. John Novus, we have students hit the pad left-handed and right-handed, left arm only, right arm only. So there's lots of things that we do once you have the sequencing down to train what you just talked about.
Right. So you don't need range balls as much as you need a mirror.
100%. That's the beauty of this, man. You get off the range, detach from outcome. I mean, when I get on the driving range, I don't want to hit crappy shots. So even myself, I'm like, well, that went left or that went right or that sliced or that hooked. Get in front of a net at first, just like if I was learning a high level baseball swing, I mean, where would you start? You would start on a tee, right? You wouldn't get in front of a 95 mile per hour major league pitcher and say, throw me a fastball. You have no chance. You start at a tee, then you gravitate to soft toss, and then you might go live pitching at slow speeds. And then at 95 miles per hour, you're not thinking. You're just reacting. But if I was going to build a high level baseball swing, I wouldn't do it, in front of a live pitcher. I would start on a tee and develop the sequencing. I mean, you see these guys when they go into slumps, where do they go? They go to the cage, right? Albert Pujols.
Right. They go to the cage, they go to the video.
Right. They go to the cage, they go to the video. And so that's
what I look like when I was doing it well. Yeah,
they go back on exactly. And that's what I do in the golf swing. It's really, it's nothing too novel. It's just how we as humans learn. And so we get out in front of the mirrors, we get in front of the nets and practice at slow speeds until we can do it like that before we speed it up.
And you've been very consistent about that as well, because I have your how-to series, which I got from your website there. And what I thought was interesting is you have like 12 videos on a how-to for something that lasts less than 3/4 of a second when I'm swinging full speed. And you broke that down into those little segments, just like you talk about.
And by the way, on today's call, I don't know how many participants, 175, For just today, it's 50% off. You get both of those how-to series, the how-to full and how-to short game, if you just go to the site, lucaswalkgolf.com, John. So everybody on here, 50% off today. But I go through the drills and the sequencing that I use with, like my guy today, Tim Willis, the same ones I use with him, the same ones with Eddie. And I know you watch them as well. Which particular drill did you like the best out of those that you watched?
I like the first one the best.
Okay.
I've gone through them. You know, I've looked at each of them, and then I go back and I like your takeaway drill, where you have the kick start, the bump, and the hip turn.
Yeah. Because
I personally struggle with you know, my pelvis rotating with my hip turn. I shift more than turn, and so I continually, and I'm doing that like throughout the day. You know, I'm in the studio teaching, and you know, I'm in between lessons, or you know, we're taking a little break. But I continually do that little motion no matter where I am. And the beauty of it is I'm in New York City, so anything you do on the streets of New York City is not odd or weird. You know, it's just like there's no weirdness where I live, right? And I just like it, because what I found myself doing is, you know, having done this for a period of time, when I go back to hit balls, which I'm not so inclined to do because I like to work with the drills, is that I start working it in without realizing I'm working it in. So then I know my subconscious is becoming part of my central nervous system.
Right. 100%.
Really,
yeah.
You know,
so that one,
interesting.
That's a great one that you talked about, the Swiss ball drill, you know, learning how to gear the pelvis on the backswing. I think it's
the Swiss
fantastic.
ball drill is very good because you know, what I don't think a lot of people understand is, you know, turning the hips is turning the pelvis, and turning the pelvis is not necessarily turning the femur, the legs, right? Which I want to get into before we get off today. John, we were talking about the, you know, about tour tempo and about ratios with Martin, who was obviously has a very, you know, a very fast competitive speed, and he trains at faster speeds than not, so that he can bump that up. Can you talk a bit about how you go about that, and how the work that you and your father have done with tour tempo? Because the thing that I see more often than I care to is players, students wanting to improve, but wanting to make, you know, very slow swings to ensure good ball flight, and the two are worlds apart.
Sure thing. It's kind of an interesting conversation we're having here, because on the one hand, you're talking about all the sequence training that Luke and I do in super slow motion.
Right.
But the reality is, when you play the sport of long drive or golf and you want power, it has to be done at ultra high speeds.
Correct.
And so you have to bake it in slowly, so you got the movements, and then we've got to use the tempo to put it into high speeds to create power. What is amazing with what Martin has done is it's all been organic. And what I want to do is I want to show you this video of his that I saw, and it just floored me, because he did 3 different 8-iron swings, and he calls it his course swing, a hard swing, and a long drive swing. And the speeds go 151, 158, 163 ball speeds. And what's interesting is each tempo fits perfectly with the tour tempo model, and they each get faster, meaning the elapsed time goes from fast to faster to incredibly fast. So I think I can share this. Let me see if I can.
John, before you do that,
yeah,
for those of us who might not be familiar with tour tempo and the work that your father started and then you have continued, explain the 3-to-1 at various tempos, like the 27.9, the 24.8, the 21.7, and then somebody like Martin who can go, you know, 18.6 or 15.5.
Sure thing. So very similar to like what Luke has done and Lee Cox and Kellen Miyahira, is that these guys didn't come up with a theory out of the blue. They studied what was happening out in the wilderness. And my dad looked at video of all these great players. And it wasn't just from when we discovered tour tempo, which was in the late 90s. It was from Bobby Jones, Ben Hogan. Every great legend that ever lived had this 3-to-1 ratio of backswing to downswing. So there was this certain ratio. The other thing that we found is that tempo is a fundamental of the golf swing. Tempo is not just this idea that, oh, you've got your own little ideas on life, you've got your way you talk and your way you walk, you're going to swing a certain way. Tempo is a fundamental, just like Having the proper hip movements is a fundamental. So you have to have these things. And the kind of the third part of tour tempo is the elapsed time. So there's the ratio 3-to-1, but there's also this elapsed time from takeaway back to impact. And what we found is for most great players on the PGA Tour, it's 1 second or less. Rory McIlroy is what's called 21-7. So it's 21 frames back, 7 frames down. If you add those up, you get 28. There's 30 frames in 1 second. So 28's a little less than 30. So he's doing that in less than a second.
From takeaway to impact.
Yeah, to get to impact. Martin, when he did the all-out 232 ball speed, it was around 16.5 or so. So it was basically 21 frames, which is mind-boggling because he's 6'6" or 6'5", and he's got a 50-inch club. So think how far that club is traveling in 21 frames, which if you do the math, that's actually 0.7 of a second.
So what Martin did is he hit a ball while Rory was transitioning.
I love to. My favorite thing is to put Martin next to like Sung J.M. or some tour player that's slightly slow.
Martin could hit probably 5 balls. Yeah,
exactly. And you kind of see this thing of like, if you want more power and you want more speed, you can do it through just increasing the tempo of your swing. I was on an incredible call with Lee Cox, and these guys were talking about ground reaction forces. And how you use the ground. And one of the crazy things is the faster you swing, the more you're going to use the ground. When you swing slow, you're just not doing much. And so, this faster swing has definitely become trendy. The other big one is Bryson DeChambeau. Luke and I are good buddies with Chris Como. I've had a couple of different conversations about Como because Bryson's tempo has transformed incredibly. It's much faster.
I noticed that when he came back. That's the first thing that I saw was, whoa, is he fast? He's like,
that's one of the first things.
He's like long drive fast.
Yeah, it's long. And so Bryson was around 24.8, and it wasn't that big of a swing. And now he's 18.6. And I said, Como, hey, did you guys make a conscious effort to do that? And he said, no, we just did whatever we had to do to increase speed. So to me, that example proves the concepts better than, hey, we did it this way and we made it happen. This was just, they let nature take its course. They let it all happen organically. And to get the most speed, that's what you had to do to achieve it. So, all these things lead to one of my big principles for hitting the ball farther. And you can do this with any student immediately right now in today's lesson, is if you get more load of the golf swing, whether it be hip turn, shoulder turn, arms in the air, or even wrist set, if you get more load and you do that in less time, you're going to increase your club head speed. That's the way we work. You can make a faster backswing and do the same amount of swing speed or same amount of length of swing. You can do, more swing, more speed into the backswing. All those things are going to get you that speed, and it's going to happen literally right this second. Like you're going to increase your speed right now. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but it gives you an idea of how a faster tempo can increase club head speed, and also this idea of the ratio. What's amazing is if you just kind of load the system properly and put some decent tempo in, everybody sort of gravitates to that 3-to-1.
That's interesting. And I think what I read in the book that your father had originally done was that when tour players get off, when they have some errant shots like during tournaments, their tempo was off.
Exactly. I think you'll see this with anybody that's played high level golf. When you ask them, hey, you played great today. What'd you do well? They don't say to themselves, oh, I was really turning my shoulders well or doing this. They say, hey, my tempo was good, or I was focused, or I wasn't worried about the outcome, or whatever those things are. But yeah, I mean, for a tour player or high level player, if that tempo is supposed to be, 22.7 or 21.7 and they're swinging 23.6, they're in trouble. That was what really happened to Tiger Woods during that period from about 2011 till maybe 2018, when he was really off. His tempo was all over the place. And he was for years consistently, the best tempo out on tour, as far as every swing was very similar.
And you competed long drive, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you have quite a lot of club head speed.
Sometimes.
once the snow melts in Kansas City, right?
That's right.
And so what do you do? What do you do on a regular training basis when you're working at, like, because you do the speed training component of the sessions that you and Lucas do when you do your sequence and speed training sessions with clients. So what types of things do you do that that you, like Martin showed how he uses the Velcro with the ball on the club, the speed ball, right? Which is an interesting tool. And then you have a lag trainer that I like, right? Because people don't understand, everybody wants to throw it away rather than retaining it.
Right.
And so what type of things have you found that work for you, John Novosel, in your development?
It's very similar to that answer Lee Cox gave earlier. Luke and I have about 5 to 10 different things we're going to throw at the guy depending on what we see in their swing and these types of deals. When I get like a tour player or a mini tour player with a great swing, we're really just jumping on that speed ball and getting them to hit something, and also doing the one arm swings. Because typically if you just swing with one arm, you'll really find some weaknesses, whether it be the right arm or the left arm. Typically, the better the player, the more their lead arm is really good and the trail arm's not as good.
Interesting.
But, that's what we're using. The other big thing that I'm trying to do when Luke's helping him with sequence and then we're moving to speed is, how can I use a resistance band or the lag copper or some of these devices to open them up? People get really tight from being on a computer. They get hunched over, things like that. We need to open up the spiral line. We need to open up the functional lines. And so I'm going to do some drills with that lag copper to have some feedback to open you up. So it's really, the tools are all about feedback and resistance. When your body has those two things, it makes an adaptation.
So again, the flexibility and mobility aspect of the individual before you, much like it does with Lee, plays a huge role in how you can go about training.
Yes, but Luke and I found that we can get a guy. I mean, we don't need to sit there and stretch for 30 minutes to get you to turn and move better. We can use some resistance. We use a principle called reciprocal inhibition, which is what Bryson DeChambeau's trainer, Greg Roscoff, uses. He calls it the MAT system, but it's basically reciprocal inhibition. And we can use those types of principles to get you opening up and moving better. But the body reacts so much better when it has some sort of feedback tool, when it has this resistance of that speed ball. Those things wake the body up and they tell you, hey, you got to do something different here. And that's what we do with these schools and with the tools to get you moving quickly, because we only have a day and a half, or even a couple hours, maybe if it's just an afternoon session. So we got to try to get you moving better right now. And if you just try to do a standard stretch without this other stuff to help you, you're just not going to get as good of results.
Hey, John, the other thing we do, we shoot ping pong balls at them too.
Yeah.
we have a ping pong. I'm a ping pong player, table tennis, but we bought a machine that shoots balls real fast at them to light their central nervous system up. And you talk about the guys having fun. It's so much fun to catch balls with your left hand and right hand, but it wakes them up.
Yeah, and that was something that we got from the World Golf Fitness Summit that some of these guys were doing too. It was also coordination, because you got to do right or left hand. So any of these types of things can wake the system up, get you out of your comfort zone.
Juggling
out of your comfort zone is huge. And the next thing you know, you're moving better, you're thinking better, you're feeling better, which are all keys to make a better golf swing.
I like that. I like the idea of shooting those ping pong balls at high rates of speed.
By the way, the guy that won that day was a scratch golfer, and they had done some research that the better you could catch, the more it correlated with your handicap. And it totally, it made complete sense. As far as
right? Because that person's obviously athletic.
It was, and they've got, this is going to bring a full circle to why you have to hit something, but your brain operates in space and time. Okay. And so when you just swing a stick and you don't hit anything, you kind of lose this huge feedback element of where things need to be in certain space and time. So when you're catching that ping pong ball, your hand's got to be here and it's got to do this. And these balls, they're kind of random where they come at you. So that, creates this huge learning moment for the brain. Same thing with that speed ball. You kind of learn, where is this impact moment? Where am I in space and time? Where should I be? And that makes a huge, huge impact upon the student.
And again, we're getting back to brain training, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're always training the brain. You're always training the brain. And
yeah, but I mean, it's just it's so lost, I think, in golf instruction.
Yeah,
and that's what you're doing with these, you know, with the speed. You're training the brain, right? Because you're training the central nervous system. I really like the idea of using, you know, of using the lag. How you create, you know, knowing your lag trainer. I put that actually on a power fan, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I use it there because I like the resistance. I like to feel it.
Yeah.
And then with, you know, when Martin was showing you with, you know, with his speedball there. Yeah. I think that's one of the best. I think that alone is one of the best training aids I have ever seen. I have mine set up in the academy, and seriously, and it's just like, I think it's a great way to warm up, right? I'll have students warm up with that rather than hit balls to warm up.
And we hit the speed ball with slow speeds too.
John, because again, you're sequencing, right?
We're sequencing with the speed ball, right, John? You want to allude to that and tell them about that?
And you know, when Luke and I kind of made our breakthrough a year and a half ago before the COVID, or geez, almost 2 years ago, before the COVID hit, we did our sequencing with the speed ball in slow motion before we actually hit balls. We didn't even swing full speed at the speed ball. What we did is we were baking in that motion with an impact. And Martin alluded to it earlier. If you go from speed sticks to a real ball, you're about going to whiff. You got to have some sort of impact, this intermediate thing to do to help you get transition to the real golf ball. And, you know, that was when, you know, Luke broke his 180 barrier. I put up some low 190s ball speeds, and we were basically just swinging slowly into the speedball target to get those feels we wanted to create to get the system ready to go. So it's hitting something and waking the brain up just does wonders for you.
Yeah, I was watching that video of Lucas breaking 180, which was quite the happy moment for him, because I know how long he's worked and how hard he's trained over the years to get there, and you could see it coming over time, and it was nice to actually be able to see the video when it did happen.
John, that was a pivotal moment. I took off running and almost tripped and fell into a hole. That was fun, John. I'll never forget that moment in Kansas City.
Again, you haven't trained a brain to run that fast, Lucas.
That's true. I got to work on that next.
So you need to start working on that. Lucas, how tall and what weight are you?
I'm about 5'8", 148. You know, close to 150. So
all right, so you're getting pretty light. You're getting more than for pound. You're getting a mile per hour plus per pound of weight.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Martin's going to have to catch up to you.
Martin's going to catch up.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, Martin's not worried just yet.
Yeah, and I'm 43 too, so I'm not young, you know. So it's
you are compared to some things. I've got shoes older than that.
John, do you want to see these swings of Martin to see this?
I'd love it. Every time I can see a swing of Martin, I love it.
Okay,
and I can share a screen too. I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, please do. No, I think it's one, it's entertaining, and two, it's certainly certainly instructional. So we have a couple of minutes before we have to move on.
If there's any elements you want to talk about too, let me know.
John, do you guys see this?
Yes, I do. Very good.
So
thank you.
The three swings. That was 21.7. You can kind of see 151. That was 18.6. 159. And so that was like his long drive swing. If you look at the right-hand side of the screen there, 21.7 was his on-course swing. Look at the speed in the upper right-hand corner, 16.6, and look how far back he's taken that club. So he's made more load in less time, and he gets back to impact in less time with further hand path. So think about what he's doing there tempo-wise. I know he's got incredible technique and he's a strong guy, but tempo alone is creating these incredible increases in speed. This one is an awesome one right here. You'll love what I've done to the audio.
Hanging out of the here in West Palm Beach.
Oh, that's yeah. I know what you did to the audio because you had to.
So there's a lot of excitement there. What's really cool though, but just kind of sit back and absorb the tempo of this thing and just watch it. It's insane.
Hanging out of the here in West.
how fast he gets back, how fast he gets through. So it's this idea of more load in less time. Here's a little deal of Bryson's before and after top of backswing. And again, he's doing this in way more, or excuse me, faster, much less time on that backswing. And he's
got the little Lucas Wald left foot dance move.
Yeah, look at the left foot, look at the hip turn. I mean, Luke could break down all the elements of how good they are, but the bottom line is it's more load in less time. And you can get any golfer to do these types of things. So those are some good ones. This is an interesting one. Bryson next to Berkshire, basically identical. Berkshire's getting more load there. He's getting it further back. So he's, able to create a little more speed. And
what's interesting about Kyle, because Bernie's coming on and Bernie's, been nice enough to share information with me about this, is his golf swing doesn't look a whole lot different than when he was a junior, when they first met like 12 years ago.
It's amazing what he's been able to do. It's absolutely insane. I'll show you one more. This is similar to the Tim Willis deal. This is one of my golfers before and after, and there's a picture of Tiger down there before and after, so to speak. And that's the top of his backswing in the blue shirt. So look at how he's loaded those four elements: the hips, the shoulders, the arms, and the wrists. And he did it in less time. This guy picked up 30 yards of carry. Now, it took him a while to do it because this was, he was sort of stiff and all these different things, but
right.
Just shows what you can do with tempo and a little bit of sequence and technique. And like Luke said, I don't ever go to the downswing. We're starting with that backswing first, because if you don't properly load, you're going to have a hard time fixing it.
No, that's why I like, when what Lucas has done is he's broken down the golf swing into those 12 videos on his how-to series. And then he's done the same thing with his short game series. And that's why I like it, because it's such an underload of information rather than overload.
Yep.
And when I first started doing it, which I again, the takeaway is always my favorite, because I feel like if that's right, I got a better chance at the next segment, right? But what I liked about it was how hard it was to do.
Right.
It's like
you got to take your time and do it.
Well, he gave me 3 movements. And I'm trying to do these 3 movements, and it was like I had to go really slowly to feel good about how I was putting them together. And that's what I thought was so compelling about the whole thing. It was just like the video came across in such a way that it was like Lucas standing there, because I couldn't do it when I went quickly.
Yep.
And things are happening too fast. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, John, let me give you one more thing on speed and power that I found just recently that is incredible. That's not golf swing related. It's more about the body.
We love it. Caitlin, pay attention, because you want more speed and power.
Yeah, I mean, this is easy speed and power. This is called a K-box. And this is Sarah working this. It's flywheel training. And she's doing a little squat. She's doing a front squat with a Romanian deadlift. There is a special I got for you guys hooked up with Eccentric for a 10% discount. So I can get you all that information. I'll show you one of the ways I've been using.
Yeah, share it with us. We'll share it with them.
Yep. It's so if you can kind of see my right leg straightening, that's my follow through. So think about what I've got to do there to make that happen. This thing will also, we always talk about, if you want to get something better, you got to measure it.
Right.
And this allows you to measure the forces you're putting in and out. So this thing is absolute home run. The other thing, it's hard to see in the video, but if you look at some of their stuff, I think all golfers should do squats. They shouldn't do back squats though with a bar, because it's very dangerous for golfers. This thing allows you to wear a harness. All the weight is on your pelvis. You can't feel a thing on your spine. So I've increased my vertical jump. I've increased my club head speed. I don't have any pain. The K-box, and they also have a K-pulley. I know Ben Shear is big up in the Northeast there. He uses one.
Yeah, Ben's right over in Jersey.
Yeah.
So again, you're not going to get, you're only going to get so much speed with your the way you swing. If you can be stronger, if you can be more flexible, if you can add mobility to your members, to your clients, then that's going to fit well with their ability to sequence better and to create more speed in less time. Exactly.
So anyway, that was one thing I wanted to share with you guys, because that's a no-brainer. That thing doesn't require a lot of space. So it's just low-hanging fruit for if you guys are working with fitness people and that type of stuff, to get more lower body power for your guys without stressing that back. keeping the stress off the spine.
Super. The other thing I might mention, John, that I work with my students is you have an app, a Tour Tempo app.
Yep.
And the thing that surprised me when I work with myself is the difference between a 24/8 and a 21/7. How quick it feels.
Yep.
Even though you're only talking, hundreds of seconds.
There's 24/8, bump, 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 and then you can hear a little difference there. It's a little quicker. And then, this is Martin swinging easy.
I don't know that Martin ever
really
swung
fast.
easy.
Yeah. So it's incredibly fast. But the Tour Tempo tones are nice for a guy that's overthinking, to get him out of that mindset. As you discussed,
I think that it's very analytical. That's true, because you get focused on the sounds and you get away from the thought process.
Yeah, because you can't. You can't.
Right, and I put somebody on that, and that's the thing they say. They stop analyzing everything and they start doing, because they're trying to match the tones.
Exactly.
And which again helps get into a better sequence, which Lucas likes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you. Lucas, we're going to pass on the information about your website, John, as well as your website.
The code, I didn't say this earlier, is MET PGA, MET PGA for today, the coupon code, guys, for the 50% off on my site. On
lucaswellgolf.com.
Right, and then they go, when they check out at the bottom, there's a coupon code, and they'll type in MET PGA.
Well, super. So, we appreciate that. I already have the full swing, so I'm going for short game for sure.
Go check it out. Brad Faxon was great on there. He gave me 30 minutes of his time. We go over all kinds of fills that he does on the greens with some drills. I think you'll like it, Hobbins.
Yeah,
let me know what you think about Fax. He's the best.
Yeah, I've enjoyed watching your work with him.
Yeah, we got to get him to. He's playing in Naples this week, so we got to. Hopefully, he has a good week.
Make some money for you. And for him. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate it. John, we'll be in touch. Thanks you for your time. I hope your season gets started. Lucas, how long are you in Florida?
1st of May. I'm going to stay here till first week in May. And then Novacell and I are going to hopefully do some schools later in the summer. We're trying to all get vaccinated and all of that. But hopefully kick up some golf schools in Kansas City, maybe late June, early
hopefully
July.
Get back to travel before the summer's over.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely
so I'll be here till May. So.
All right. I will be in touch. Again, thank you
sir.
very much. John, thank you very much. And look forward to catching up, Lucas.
Appreciate it, guys. Talk soon.
Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye. Got it.
All right. So where we are, right? We got sequence training with Lucas, and then we got the speed, tempo, upbeat swings of John Novacell. I really like John's app, because like he said, it gives you those tones of takeaway, top of backswing, and then impact, or the 3 tones that you were hearing. And it's amazing to me, even the slow tempo, how much faster they are than what I see with my swings. Next up, we have Bernie Najar. Bernie's in addition to being a friend and somebody that I have known for a number of years, have attended a number of seminars. Bernie teaches aim point green reading as I do. And so, we've spent a lot of time at those seminars. We spent a lot of time out west in Carlsbad doing some seminars together. And what I think was particularly interesting about Bernie and his relationship with Kyle Berkshire is that he started with Kyle when Kyle was a junior, and he has some pictures of that which are quite interesting. And Kyle's now, I think, about 6'3", 225. Current world long drive champion from 2019, as last year's was suspended due to COVID. But what you'll notice with Kyle's motion is, other than being bigger and faster, it's not much different from the motion that Bernie and Kyle worked on when he was a junior, because Kyle apparently as a junior was not very big, nowhere near the size he is as an adult. And so they had to have very good technique, again, something that Lucas was mentioning, as well as what Lee was talking about, to optimize what he was doing. So I think Bernie has a very good presentation. And what I particularly wanted to do with Bernie is that he worked through his junior program. So Bernie has like 12 years of information that has created a world-class long drive champion. as well as an accomplished college player. And I believe Kyle's trying to transition now into tournament golf. So there's a lot of great information there for us, and especially those of you who have junior programs and what you're doing with your kids, because Bernie has a blueprint for success of what's worked for him. He has 12 years of history with it, which is very unique because very few people have somebody at 12 and then have kept them all through their junior high school, college, and now professional careers. And so you've heard enough from me. Let's hear from Bernie from Maryland.
Good morning, everyone, or I should say good afternoon. It's 12, and it's an honor to be part of today's Met PGA Education Forum. I'm in the Mid-Atlantic section, and it's always great to spend time with my fellow professionals. I'm sorry we're not in person, but thanks to John and the Met PGA, we're able to do this via Zoom. So thank you for this opportunity. Today, what I think would be probably best to share with all of you, and certainly we'll take your questions, as John alluded to, is developing juniors relative to what we're all hearing requests for today with speed and distance, and helping everyone know a little bit more about Kyle and his development, and also the unique growth characteristics he had, because I think many of you over your time teaching golf will see, if you haven't seen already, the kids that come to you, they might not be particularly big, and then they take off with their growth, or they don't really take off and all of a sudden they're late bloomers. They grow later in high school and so forth, or the kids that are doing the opposite, that take off early. So I'm going to touch on that as well as some different things. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, and start with a little presentation here that I'm going to just go through a few things. And just to start with, I also want to commend Lee, John, and Lucas on a great set of presentations. That was fantastic information, and I hope to build on what they spoke about today. As John Hobbins mentioned, I've been working with Kyle since 2009. Here's some quick facts on Kyle. And obviously he's had just tremendous success of late, and he's doing a lot of cool stuff. He's changed equipment recently to Cobra. He certainly could hit probably any club well that you give him that he won't break at his speeds, but with his relationship with Bryson DeChambeau now and what made sense for him in terms of what he wants to do professionally, he's made the switch from Callaway to Cobra. When he won the World Championship, he was playing Crank and the Volvic ball. As I mentioned, we've been working together since 2009. And so I'll talk a little bit about his skill development and some things we did to get him ready for college golf and beyond. We're going to go through a little swing evolution, touch on the long drive tour and Kyle's team and partners. So just to start off with, Kyle is a really unique character, as you've probably all seen on social media, and he loves to practice. He's a really hard worker, and whatever you gave him to do, he was going to practice from sun up to sundown. And he has the same, I would say, work ethic with his nutrition and what he does in the gym. So he's really someone that once he decides on something, he goes full out into it. That wasn't always easy, because a lot of times as a kid, he was fighting certain things and didn't want to do certain things. So a lot of what we had to do is create games. And I'm sure many of you do the same with your juniors. But what I would have to do with Kyle is I create challenges. And you'll see this is just a little shot here in my old teaching facility at Woodhome Country Club. And what we would do is we would play games where he had to hit through those gates or at those cones. And luckily I had that picture there to show you guys. But he was the kind of junior where it was easier for me to fix his club path by getting him to hit a shot versus telling him necessarily the mechanical cause and effect of that. Now, as an adult, he processes all that information a lot better. But a lot of juniors, it's easier to get them to fix their path, their attack angle, by giving them shots to hit that produce those numbers. So I did a lot of that with Kyle. When you got into lessons with Kyle, there was always a trick shot we had to hit, or some kind of challenge. So we kept it fun. And the more you can do that with your players of all ages, I think that we're all going to have more fun together. And that experience, you know, he'd come in, and at some point during the lesson, we picked an unusual spot. And he's been doing this for years. And this was a fun one for Kyle. And, you know, he certainly got it out and certainly needed some new clothes. And his dad probably wasn't too happy with me. But at the end of the day, that's what really kept him interested in coming out, because he knew there was going to be a new challenge instead that he took a lesson with me. You'll see his swing here. That's early on. And then you can see in high school where he's in the red shorts. And then you're going to see here at the bottom, this is right before he left to play the 2019 World Championship. And he had set a ball speed record that day, just over 228 at Caves. And I'll show you that swing later. But what's cool is, as John mentioned, his swing, it's a ball, but you'll see a lot of the same characteristics here. Now, like a lot of kids, as you get into their downswing, before puberty, their core isn't strong enough to do certain things that they can do after. And you can see little differences here with his upper body through the ball, but a lot of the same characteristics. You'll see his grip. He's always had a strong grip. He modified it a little bit over time, but as his speed went up, we had to go back to a stronger grip. He's always had an incredible ability to decelerate, hit the brakes, and side bend and rotate into his finish, and we'll talk a little bit about that. His swing, you know, many of you have probably done 3D analysis or heard about it, hear about the kinematic sequence, which is certainly great information. What I found interesting with Kyle and looking at some of the longer hitters is the transition sequence, which he definitely, you know, he has the peak speed. You'll see there, lower body, upper body, torso, arms, club. But he definitely starts down with his upper body first. And that might seem a little contradictory to what many of us have been told is correct, but we'll touch on that more later. But I thought you'd find it interesting in terms of his downswing. And because of that, when you look at what he does and, you know, you think about the long backswings today, we got to make sure these athletes have strong back and shoulders to do these things at a high speed. And I'll come back to that. But in terms of evolving as a player and some of the things you're going to see with Kyle, first of all, he's not a guy that changes very often. And if you look at the grip picture on the left, you're going to see that's what he showed up with when he returned from his third semester of college, when we were talking about shifting the long drive. And I said, Kyle, you ever regrip your clubs? And he's like, no, you know, they feel good. But what I wanted to show you in this picture is the wear on this golf club. And, you know, if someone's out there thinking, oh, I'm going to hold it really light and swing fast, I'm not telling you that you should strangle the club and that's going to help you swing fast. But to slow that club down and to generate that transfer of energy, these guys are holding it a lot firmer than you think. Now, to Kyle or anybody who's swinging at this speed, it probably feels light to them. But you're going to see some of those characteristics with your longer hitters. They are applying a lot of friction to that grip. And I thought that was a cool shot to share with you. Some other stuff that you'll see with Kyle, and this is just going back to some initial captures. I use Swing Catalyst, and I have for the past 7 years, and I put in the motion plate at a unique time when, you know, Kyle happened to be going through his growth spurt. So it was cool to see some of his involvement in terms of ground forces and so forth. But one thing that you'll see with his pattern, as you will see with lots of long hitters, is very high vertical force numbers. Kyle happens to have very high torque, but you'll see here in the horizontal, not crazy high, but certainly has plenty. But what he does so well is he decelerates in the downswing. We'll talk about that in a little bit, in a way where he can post up, and you'll see the foot off the ground there. He's been doing this for a long time. This is not brand new stuff. And you'll see here a little bit later, this is at the show when I took him over to the Swing Catalyst booth, which was quite an experience for people there, because this is when we had just done some training. He went from the high 120s to the low 130s, and within 3 months of this, he was in the low 140s for club speed. And a lot of what we were doing with Kyle is what we've always been doing, but we lengthened his golf swing and gave him some freedom in the top end of his swing to go back into a place normally he wouldn't go for control. But you'll see the same force patterns virtually in all his swings. So that's pretty neat. And the reason I'm showing you this is that while you can make changes to your players in this department, the really long hitters tend to come with this already in place. You might find the timing aspect of it where through, for example, the Tour Tempo app and other vehicles to work on people's timing, you'll help them improve the sequencing of this. But generally speaking, these guys are all using the ground forces as you see here. And you'll see this swing here was around 150 miles an hour. You can see the magnitude of the forces here. And then if we just go back, this is around 130 miles an hour, pretty similar stuff. So, neat to see that evolve. These were some of the first thresholds that he really busted through. This is 2018 before Worlds, and he didn't win that year. He struggled more mentally than physically. He was ready to go, and he certainly could have won that year. But, you can see his body change. I mean, if you just look at this impact position compared to this, really see he was putting on some mass here. And then he got leaner when he won in 19. And if you see him today, he's very lean, certainly big and strong, and he's got plenty of power in the tank. I mean, for example, when he comes out, our standard challenge is he spots me 30 miles an hour, and every once in a while I'll sneak up on him. But he's quite an athlete, and he's been getting better all the time. When we look at Kyle, what he's trying to do is always get his health and fitness better. He's going to play in 5 professional long drive events, and that's based on his contract with Cobra and the simple fact that the World Long Drive Tour is not really happening at this time with COVID and what happened with Golf Channel. That professional tour has been limited. He wants to start playing in some pro golf events. He's spending a lot of time in Dallas now. He told me he's joining Dallas National, I think, next week. And he's getting a chance to spend a lot of time with Bryson. And you'll see him do some stuff with Chris Como on Golf Pass. So he'll be out and about doing some things. And we hope to see him continue to have fun and build his skills as a professional golfer. He was just in last week, or I'm sorry, about 2 weeks ago. And we did a little bit of work, and we check in when he's in Maryland. I talked to Kyle quite a bit on the phone. He'll send me swings, and he's getting better with his wedges and short game. He's got a ways to go, and he's got to get his feet wet in competition to get familiar with that whole emotional, mental state of playing regular golf. Because as we all know, long drive's a little different. And we can talk about the long drive in a little bit here. But based on what you've seen so far, do you guys have any questions or anything you'd like me to discuss in more detail about Kyle's development? Sorry, John, I can't hear you. Did you turn your mic on?
All right, there I am.
Yes,
so
great.
When you were talking about Kyle as a junior and then his growth spurt from high school to college.
Yeah.
Completely unexpected.
Yeah, totally unexpected. I mean, Kyle's about 6 in high school. He was closing in on 6 feet, but he was probably 5'8", 5'9", and just sort of stayed right there. And then he got a little bit taller, and then all of a sudden he goes to college. He might have been 6'1", 6'2" by then, but he grew another inch. Might have grown another 1.5 inches. And that was different. I've never had a junior golfer do that. But obviously, what he did as a junior when he was smaller than his peer group, because there was plenty of time in 9th and 10th grade, he wasn't over 5'6".
Right.
He absolutely worked his butt off to stay up with the other kids. And there were some long hitters that he competed against that happened to be students of mine as well, who were the opposite. Those were kids in 7th, 8th grade that started to take off. And by the time they were freshmen in high school, they were already 6 feet tall.
Right.
They had a big advantage, and that can affect everyone because, you know, mentally, I would say Kyle, you know, he was used to hitting the ball past those kids, and he was accustomed to beating a lot of them. And then all of a sudden they got bigger, stronger, and they're out hitting him. And, you know, he was taking on swings to keep up with them that would get him into trouble if he didn't hit the ball well. But he's an amazing athlete, great hand-eye. I truly believe he could have been a professional baseball player. If you've seen Kyle do things, and he did play a good bit of baseball before he committed to golf, but he's just got unique hand-eye coordination and skills to hit a ball at high speed, not just in golf, but in other sports. And that coupled with his determination really helped him get to where all of a sudden he was reaching different distance thresholds to the point where his freshman year in college, I got a text from him and he sent me a screenshot of his club speed. It was 124 miles an hour, and he had just gotten to school. And probably 3 weeks before, he was around 118. And I said, wow, that looks a lot better. And he says, yeah, that's my 3-wood. And so that was interesting. So when he came back in November, we saw he was closing in on, 126, 127. And so as we started looking at long drive, because of the simple fact he was being told by his teammates and his college coach, hey, you should give this a shot. It was time to see what would happen if we lengthened his golf swing. So what we did was we went into gears. I had the gear system running, and we did a capture, and we looked at his golf swing, and we pulled up Jamie Sadlowski and started looking at some of Jamie's swing characteristics and how much more Jamie was setting the club at the top of the backswing than Kyle, and how much past parallel he was. So we started using Jamie as a model, and Kyle's speed started to go up little by little, and but still at a significant rate relative to where he was. I mean, imagine going from 116 club speed to 130 club speed. Well, now he's at in the low 150s, and potentially he could be at 160 in a year or so if he really wants. I mean, he is doing some amazing stuff. So incredible to see that transition, but going back to it, his baseline swing, we can go through some different things. I'll share in Swing Catalyst. I'll stop this share and I'll head over to Swing Cat so you guys can see some different things with a little more detail. So this is right here, as I mentioned early on in this long drive quest. This is at the PGA show, and you'll see the strong grip, the very forward ball position. Probably the best thing about this shot is he was hitting into the screen, and there was a hot dog vendor on the other side. It probably wasn't feeling so good after that ball hit the screen. So we got a few comments about that. But what you'll see with Kyle and a lot of long hitters, and I know you've heard a lot of this already today, is early in the backswing, you just notice how he's able to load his upper body, lower body, real big hand height relationship here, I think, in long hitters, getting the hands up nice and high, and most importantly, not restricting the lower body.
Right, good wind up.
You'll see that, he winds up beautifully here, and through the ball, he's able to unwind and get extremely open with his upper and his lower body. And because of that, a strong grip matches up nicely. If you open that much with a weaker grip, and I thank God every time I see Kyle that I didn't weaken his grip as a junior, that's a good matchup there for someone that is that explosive, because a weaker grip right there, a more conventional looking grip, that ball would go way to the right with his wrist angles and where he's strong. So when he got further along the way, and we're looking at things here, and let's just say that we go over here to right before the COVID dilemma. This is 2020 at the PGA show. You'll see again, strong grip. He's physically a different guy now, but you'll see the same action here. Now, he was doing his rocking move, which he's gone away from. But, you know, that was really good for his timing and helping him get a consistent load in the backswing. And you'll see again, backswing longer than where it was. This is the braking action that's so incredible right here. If you look at where he is with his left arm's parallel to the ground, and you look at the graph over here under horizontal, watch how quickly he is able to hit the brakes here and get all the way back to that 0 line before impact. Very few people can do that. And that's one of those skills where he's able to gain speed in the hitting zone that a lot of people can't, because he can move so dynamically there. If you watch him hit enough balls, what's so impressive now is he's able to swing so smooth and still be in the high 140s. And a lot of that's his strength, but beautiful timing that keeps improving in his swing, and certainly hitting enough balls to where he's getting more and more confident with it each day. So again, those magnitudes that you see, they're very similar to what he's always done, but his body continues to get stronger to support the motion. I love how, you know, if you watch him here, he's just continuous the whole time. And I think under pressure, that really helped him flow with his golf swing, not get stuck over the ball. Obviously, he's doing great without the rock move now, but if you ever have a student that's struggling getting the swing underway, this is a good little drill to have them do. And, you know, what you want to do is get them to start by just picking up their right leg and finding balance on the front side. And then they can load into their trail side with that little step. And that's a nice little thing they can do. And that gets the pressure over there. And from there, just giving it a good grip.
Did you guys develop that together, Bernie?
No, he had a small version of that, and then he made it bigger. He was talking to Bobby Peterson, who he's got the One Stop Power Shop, and Bobby runs the Professional Long Drive Tour and has a big presence on that circuit. And Kyle wanted to put some momentum in his swing by using this type of pattern, and they tested it and it worked out for him. But you'll see, if you just go back in time here, for example, this is in my studio. This is, let's see here, 2016. So you'll see when he starts his swing off, he's always pushed left. If you look at that pressure trace, and you'll see as he continues from here, very similar pattern. I'm going to change softwares just for a second. And let's see here, we're going to go over to JC Video. Fun having all this stuff on my computer. Bear with me a second. I don't know why I'm not seeing the JC video. 1 second here. All right, I will come back to that. For some reason, it's not showing the JC.
Now, when did Kyle start transferring to a playing game or playing motion? How long ago was that?
What I would say is, you know, we trained Kyle to play regular golf till he got to college, and even his first year and a half. And what he's been doing behind the scenes is trying to get better at playing regular golf. So you'll see him, you know, he'll film a lot of his YouTube stuff on the course. He's playing different people or just playing different golf courses, and he's working on his skills. And he knows where he is right now. And I would tell everyone that he's probably around a +2. He knows that's nowhere near tour level, but, you know, he's got the time and the skills to hit the ball well enough with his full swing. He needs to learn how to manage those skills and get his short game up a level.
And then when you had him as a junior, I like the idea of how you were using external cues to make swing changes rather than giving him swing information. I think that's very creative, especially with juniors. And I like external cues for my adults too, because they get, too bogged down with thinking a lot of times. And then you did a really good job of developing his motion as a junior, which obviously has carried over to now. Could you, like, for those of our attendees here who are doing a lot of work with juniors, what are you, based on this experience, what do you think are some do's and don'ts from your experience of looking back on those formative years for Kyle that you were happy that you did, and are there things that you may not have done?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would start, I'm just going to grab a little prop here.
Because keeping it fun for the kids is such a big deal, right? Because they can get bored easily. They're, in today's age with the technology and use of phones and so forth, they move much more rapidly than we did as kids.
That's for sure. Well, the first thing, John, is I'd say, looking at the grip, if we teach this nice, classic looking grip here, and you have a player that gets super open and heels are up at impact, just adjust the face to match up to their club face. And that will save you and them a lot of heartburn. And the reason I say that, so often, what would happen is Kyle would come in and his dad would say to me, so-and-so thinks his grip's too strong, or so-and-so thinks he's moving his feet too much. And what I would say to his father is, your son is very gifted at putting the club on the ball from there. And for example, if I change his grip, he's going to lose distance and he's not going to be happy with me. So it's a little bit of knowing the mechanics as far as the cause and effect of making a change, and also knowing how the kid's going to respond to that. Now, there are plenty of kids you do have to change their grip, or you have to modify what they're doing, because if you don't, they're capped on what they can do. But Kyle, as I mentioned early on, was always someone that hated to be outdriven. And one of his ways of hitting the ball far was presenting less loft. And his natural default with his body had always been to have a very explosive lower body. And again, that stronger grip helps. Now, as you lose some of that explosiveness, if you're working with players that aren't as fast, not to jump from juniors to seniors, but you might find you have to do the opposite to get the grip to match up. So matching up the grip's important. Lower body movement. If I had taught Kyle the restricted lower body backswing, I would have probably ruined him. So thankfully I didn't do that. But again, there are plenty of players out there that can't coordinate a lot of movement, right? So you have to balance that out. But my experience with guys that swing upright like Kyle, normally they're players where their leverage is pretty much getting their arms up as high as they can. You need to let them pivot as much as they can. So thankfully, I met some really good people along the way that were mentors to me that helped me understand why Jack Nicklaus's swing worked well and why Ben Hogan's swing worked well. Jim Hardy in particular is a great friend and mentor of mine who I've always had tremendous respect for, because he'll take you through how those different swing styles work.
Right. And, one plane, two plane.
Exactly. You can go through the history of the game and you'll see all kinds of different swings in the Hall of Fame that look different, but function well under pressure. And so, with Kyle, again, being someone who I knew was going to move fast and furious through the ball, the strong grip was a good match. Getting him to play shots to fix path and attack angle issues was really important. And getting him to be creative and tap into that side of him by getting him to come up with different trick shots. That was really important. The stuff I wish I spent more time with Kyle on was stuff I learned later, which we implemented more so in high school and in college. But it was tough because, again, timing's everything when you can share stuff with people, when you can get to them. I mean, you might have the best thing to tell that person, but they're not ready to hear it. And so today he's willing to listen to things that if I tried to tell him 10 years ago, even though I might have had perfect information or feedback for his game, he didn't want to hear it. You know, he was consumed with, I don't want Chris Navarro out driving me, or I don't want Bennett Book out driving me. Keep me hitting it far. You know, I'm just going to hit 18 greens because my short game's not that great. I wish I spent more time with Kyle on the golf course. I wish I spent more time with Kyle strategically on the golf course. And now we talk more about those things. Not that we didn't back then, but it's one of those things. If I could have done more of that. The one thing that Kyle is, a lot of people don't know this, he has about 10% hearing in both ears. And I think that helps him in a lot of ways for doing long drive. I think it's a little bit of a handicap for his short game and putting, because so much of what we feel and hear help us adjust whatever we're doing near the green. And
so the lack of the sound.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And, you know, at the same time, he can tune out a lot of things that would bother a lot of players. Right. He's oblivious to a lot of things around him. So, you know, you get some blessings that, you know, they don't seem like blessings, but I think that's helped him in a lot of ways. But
so you feel, Bernie, when people say that I'm oblivious, that's an asset?
It can be if you're
okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Tell us, you had mentioned earlier about his KVS sequence where his torso begins before his lower body.
Yes.
That's very interesting to a lot of us, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think what you'll see.
And again, this is something you saw early on but didn't change?
Well, here's what I know. If a guy's hitting the ball well or a girl's hitting the ball well and they're putting the club on the ball with a correct and repetitive impact, just to borrow a couple words from Jim Hardy and John Jacobs.
John Jacobs, right.
I would say that their sequence is probably pretty good.
Don't fix it.
Well, you know, when a guy's out hitting everyone he plays with and people are coming in as if they, you know, I mean, I can remember as Kyle got into college, he was playing in the U.S. Amateur qualifying. He got paired with this guy who came back, called me right away. I didn't work with him, and he said, I need to come see you because Kyle was out driving me by 50 yards, and I'm not sure. I mean, you know, if he wasn't efficient with his swing, if he wasn't executing, you know, the quality shots he was, maybe we'd look into tweaking that. But what you're going to see, because the hands are so high, that the spine is backward bended quite a bit here, and that first move, he's going to have a tremendous move here. Not that his lower body's static or isn't moving, but because he's traveled so far with his hands and because his spine had so much motion, the first move down is more with the upper body. Now we're talking, you can't see it, but again, going back to when you get under the hood in 3D, you will be able to measure that a little bit more. And you'll see that with longer swings because they have to get the arms. Think about if you're up much higher here, if you start rotating early, you're going to have some issues. You know, Jack Nicklaus, if he tried Ben Hogan's downswing, it would be probably not so hot. If you took Nicklaus in his prime and you had Jack from here to turn his left hip out of the way, we'd have no Jack Nicklaus winning all these majors. He knew he had to move the club down more, and Jack felt it more through his legs. But not that Kyle necessarily stands there and goes, all right, I'm going to go upper body first. It's just one of those things where that's how he would slot the club well. His challenge as an upright player, you know, we'll have to use at times a stick up here just to keep him in the plane, so to speak, because he is really fast at rotating, but far less of that issue now. In fact, if anything, he gets a little under in his downswing.
And Lee had mentioned that earlier during his presentation about the high hands.
Yeah.
And the further, one of the things that Lee sees often, which I thought was very interesting, is the further the hands get from the ball, the higher the hands get, the more opportunity to create speed. And it's interesting that you see the same thing with Kyle, which is why I think like there's a lot of commonality to what all of you see in your ability to create speed with your players.
Yeah, if you can do it, right? Not everybody can do it. I mean, I can tell you with my own game, that was worth 10, 12 miles an hour.
So let's back up here. Your game, you added high hands?
Yes.
And for 12 miles an hour?
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So, you know, back when I played, my peak speed when I played a lot of golf would be early 2000s. And I would say I was in that probably 110, 112 club speed area, which was pretty good for me. But, you know, after some time and after teaching a lot, not playing enough and a few injuries, I was struggling to stay over 100. But I've gotten my speed back and a couple miles an hour more when I train for it. But I can't do it from here. If you put me here at the top, I'm going to be sitting at 100 miles an hour. If you let me get to here, now I can hit 115. I don't play at 115 the whole time, but I can get 115 in a speed session. I'll usually play with that same field somewhere around 110, which is pretty.
Because I think this is interesting because, you know, many of the professionals that are on here today are operating homes with spouses, with partners, with children, in addition to all their responsibilities at work. So I think I'd like to, if you could spend a few minutes on how did you do that, Bernie? What was the decision and what allows you to do that? Because that's a tremendous amount of speed.
So to give you an example, I would say to you, first of all, every time I'd spend time with Kyle and he'd come out, again, he's going to needle me and be like, all right, so am I going to outdrive you today with a 4-iron or a 6-iron? What's it going to be? So that was good. And he's great at challenging me as well.
So he likes to jab.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it's good to have someone that jabs you about it. And I got to a place where I had a bad foot injury. I had a student hit me full speed in my right leg in 2009. And the issues from that wouldn't let me load into this side. So my golf swing started hanging out on the left side. My backswing got really low. That was a disaster for speed. So once I did the rehab work on that and, you know, taking care of my body more regularly, lifting weights, etc., now I can do things better. But a lot of doing it better requires you to hit golf balls. You know, I love what was discussed earlier about swinging these sticks versus hitting golf balls, right? Because, yeah, you get these people, they can swing a stick above the ground with nothing there. And they're like, wait a second, I can swing, you know, this stick 100 miles an hour, but when I hit a golf ball, I only go 80 miles an hour. Well, you know, you can swing those sticks to burn calories, to warm up, do whatever. But for me, and I know this as well from what Kyle would say about it, you've got to hit enough balls. And for me, a speed set might be 50, 60 drivers. And the first 25, my cruising speed's going to be somewhere in the low hundreds once I get going, and then it's going to ramp up to around 110. Then I'll sneak a few over 110, and then it'll stabilize towards the end. So you got to make time to hit balls. Obviously, you got to do your work in the gym. But when you're hitting drivers, a couple of thoughts for you. One, the ball's on a tee, and you're not banging into the ground, so it's a lot less strain on your body than hitting irons. And I think that's a positive. The other thing about hitting drivers, when you get into this mentality of, hey, I'm going to have a speed set, is you bring yourself back to being a kid where you're just having fun and you're just blasting them out to the range. And you need to get your heart rate up. You need to feel charged up. So maybe throw on some music, listen to some stuff that inspires you to feel athletic, strong. Make sure that you're wearing clothes that let you get the club back. You know, a lot of times, you know, look, by the time you're done hitting a bunch of shots like I'm describing, when you're full out, your shirt's popping out every swing. You know, Kyle's hat's falling off when he's swinging at full blast. But the point is, you got to get ready to go fast, and you can do it a lot of ways. But most important thing is make time a couple days a week to hit 50 drivers. And you can start by saying, okay, this week I'm going to hit 25 drivers. Build yourself up to be able to hit 50. And then from there, ramp it up to to another number. I mean, Kyle can hit 500 drivers a day when he's training, you know, but we as club pros, if we did a tenth of that, which would be a lot for a lot of us. I mean, if you hit 100 drivers in a week as a full-time PGA professional at practice, that would be a bunch. But in years past, what I would do is I'd practice wedges because that wouldn't bother my leg, and my swing around the greens is great. You can hit all kinds of shots, but your short game mechanics are very different than your power mechanics.
What about your tempo when you started it, when you found that you were increasing your speed with your driver, because that's a very noticeable difference.
Mm-hmm.
How did that affect your tempo? Do you think you're faster?
Well, I am, because I'm going to use the same amount of time with a bigger swing.
All right. So you're moving faster.
I'm more of a 4-to-1 guy. And that's mainly just that loading pattern works for me. And when I say that, I take the club back a little bit slower. But when you start swinging more speed, or you're going to get to a higher speed, then you have to be willing to load it with a little more energy. And
right, that's what Martin was talking about.
Yeah, so like if you had an orange whip, you might feel a little flexing, right? But my power keys are, I go a little wider with the base, and you know, I've always had a little extra motion here when I get ready to go. I borrowed that from watching some Hogan videos a long time ago, where you'd see him waggle and adjust his stance and get a little wider.
Right.
And then crank yourself into motion, right? And what I learned, Kyle gave me a good tip last summer, was he wanted me to be a little bit, he calls it supple quickness, right? So get a little freer in the wrist. So I'm going to take my ceiling out here, but being able to really load that shaft past parallel and having the courage to keep that same freedom at the top of the swing. Don't tense up because you want to hit it hard. It's counterintuitive, right? You want to hit it hard, but you need to be soft enough to load that shaft.
Right.
So that's a big thing. I know for me, if I'm past parallel, I can swing over 110. If I'm only to parallel, I'm at 106, 107.
Interesting.
If I'm too flat, I can tell you I'll be in the, you know, we'll call it barely 100 miles an hour. That would be about 105. There's your 112, 115. Now, if you think about it, why is that so key? Well, it gives your spine a little more time to load.
Right, more extension.
It also gives you a chance to accelerate your club head more up before it gets down. And those two things create a lot more distance for the club to travel and pick up speed. You know, that's the way I can't, if I swing like, for example, John Rahm or Tony Finau, I can get to a decent speed, but I'm not going to get to my high speed. That's not going to work.
And what have you taken, like, you know, all these years with Kyle, obviously, and, you know, and much like Lee is experienced, and much like Lucas is experienced, because, you know, you've all been part of a world champion journey, which has got to be very fulfilling, and at the same time, very fortunate that you must feel for that. How have you taken all that information, and then, you know, you're at Caves Valley, so you see a lot of, shall we say, you know, competitive club players, you know, a lot of men and women, you know, some single digits, and, you know, a lot in the teens and 20s probably. What have you done with them? How has this helped you become a better teacher to those individuals?
That's a great question. The first thing is, if someone's coming to me to hit the ball, we'll say longer, we're going to measure what they do. I can share with them where their power leaks are. I can share with them where their equipment might not be optimized. I mean, one thing I didn't touch on is equipment, right? Because as your speed goes up, your equipment has to change. So Kyle's driver, we found we had to go down to like 3.5, 4 degrees aloft. And you'll see that with players. As they get over 120 miles an hour, you have a 10.5 driver on there and they hit up at all, they don't have a lot of D-loft on their impact, you better go to less loft. So less loft always helps ball speed, assuming they can handle it. And obviously, as you do the work to help them increase whatever speed they have, you got to make sure their equipment is tuned for that as well. As another thing that you have to know is like, okay, how do I get the face more stable for this player? Do they need more weight in the heel or more out on the toe? And you're always fine tuning that to help them reach their goals. But for driving, a lot of players, what I would say the big challenges for the guys is mostly you got to get them to have enough range of motion. You're dealing with most people that their swings are getting shorter as they get over 40. And sometimes it's an injury where all of a sudden they can't move the way they used to. They're sitting in a desk too often, driving their cars, or stuck in flexion, right? So try to give them some movement exercises that open up their spine, and try
because
to
you want that spinal extension.
Absolutely.
If Bernie, if you would if you could turn sideways and face your table there, yes. So when you say spinal extension for our audience, show me what spinal extension looks at without the golf swing.
All right. So think about most people sitting in their chair or driving a car. This would be flexion.
Correct.
And that would be extension.
Okay.
It would be like you're making a C in your back and making an S.
Okay. So you're lengthening it feels like you're lengthening the spine.
Absolutely. And also understanding that as you do it, being able to also coordinate your pelvis with it. So a lot of those squats that they were talking about, the hip hinge squats, you know this from Michael Bentley, doing squats, not with the bar behind you, but to the side of you, working on hip hinge, that's really important. And, most of the time, if we have someone and they're doing that type of work, and I did a bunch of that work and still do, that's going to help the lower body a bunch, because if you're not hip hinging properly, we got issues with a lot of things that are going to affect your ability to transfer energy. And then you're going to start loading the wrong segments. So
that gets into your joints and mobility once again.
Yeah, there you go. So if you get people where, their concept of turning looks like this, we see a lot of people like this, they're stuck in forward bend. They're spinning like this, thinking they're turning, but they're really rotating from the lumbar. And that's going to fry their back.
Correct.
That generally doesn't help. So if you allow them to get motion here, get them to learn how to drive into the backswing, unweight that lead side, that's a big deal. Now, I will take these little TheraBands a lot of times, and I'll get my players just to put their hands on opposite sides of it like this. Doesn't need to be a lot of tension. And I'll have them do some stretches like this. And I'll say to them, I want you to get your rib cage sticking out more, okay? Because if they're stuck in flexion, they're like this. So this is a good one. And you can do both sides. That's a real important thing to get them to warm up and feel. These little bands, you can also do a bunch of shoulder exercises. Again, that simple motion there is going to help their scapula and the back muscles move because they're so stuck most of the time.
Right.
And what we have to keep doing, with the guys is open them up for the most part. With the girls, sometimes they need to learn how to, we'll say, separate their segments a little better, because sometimes they're just moving everything and there isn't any resistance at all. And, you got to create a platform that they can load against. So it depends on their situation, but most of the time, the guys are trying to muscle it more with the wrong parts. The girls, like the juniors, a lot of times their legs are outrunning everything. So you have to match those up. And sometimes that's gym work. Sometimes it's sequencing work with drills. I can go through a couple of those scenarios for you if you want. But for the most part, you got to look at them and see what they need and then give them the fix. And then if you don't have the fix, or if it's a body fix, align them with the right physio, and that will go a long way for you.
Right. So again, it's that multi-pronged approach where, like Lee and Lucas were talking about, they have you're fixing golf swings to begin with. but you might have a mobility issue, which is a joint issue. You might have a flexibility issue, which is more of your tissue. And then as John Novosel and Martin like to do, the speed training. So it's a multi-pronged approach to create better golf swings.
Yes. Yeah, you can't go out there with the same recipe for everyone that comes out, because some people, for example, there's some people you might have hitting shots off their knees with the
right,
because they need to learn that upper body sequencing there. Doesn't mean they aren't using their legs, but they got to learn that they can put the club on the ball with that formation. And then other people, you might have them do that little rocking drill that Kyle's implemented and won a world championship with.
And won a world championship with.
You might have them hit some shots right leg back, left leg back. But most of the time, you'll find the patterns that they're missing. Let's just say they're not transferring the energy well. I mean, I think a ton of people don't know how to do this. They have no coordination of slowing the grip end down and squaring a face up. I have a gentleman I just got through giving a Zoom lesson to. He's from out of the area. He reached out to me and he wanted me to look at his golf swing. So we set up a time and I pretty much taught him in his Zoom lesson how to slow the butt of the club down and do this. And he reported back, he's never hit it longer. Didn't really do anything to his golf swing. I just gave him a couple drills to square the head up earlier.
You fixed his wrist.
Yeah.
Right, which we had done, and you and I have chatted nonstop over the past few months about the hack motion that we did a seminar on earlier, which is a great piece of technology, and so again, as you've matured as an instructor, you've had a lot of success, which you're certainly deserving of. But the thing that's always impressed me about you is your willingness to continue learning. Like every time I talk to you, I get the impression that you know less, but you know more, and that you're always searching, you're always looking, you're always turning, and there's not anything that you wouldn't do that would be too outlandish with your students if it's going to fix them. Would you think that's something that you've learned as an instructor, that to keep looking, to keep searching, and things that you might have thought were crazy at one time aren't as crazy as you may have thought?
I think you're spot on with everything you just said. I mean, we never bat 1,000%. As if you really look at your players, you can always find little areas where, gee, maybe I'm missing something here, or maybe I need to revisit this with this player. And you're thinking to yourself, is it me? Is it them? Is it not the right fit? Or you know what, we got something out of this, but it's sort of maxed out. So what else can we put in there to build on that? And, I think anybody who's really passionate about what they're doing, this is the stuff that, you're always thinking through and figuring out how to be better. And my mentors, I've been very blessed. I've had some great mentors. They've instilled this in me. And the folks I meet in the business world that I get to spend time with, it's a lot of the same stuff. They're always trying to get better, and it's what drove me to become who I am today. I wanted to do this because I love it. I'm passionate about it. I'm excited about it, and I get up in the morning thinking about how I'm going to help people play better golf and enjoy their life more through golf and what we're doing. So I'm always trying to learn new things, and I would say to everyone, we're in a unique industry where not only do we get to learn a lot of cool new things, but we get to share it with our peers, which is great. There are a lot of businesses out there where Jeff Bezos is probably not sharing with Walmart what he's doing. And
probably not.
Not to say any of us are in that category, but it's incredible how many PGA professionals help each other. And it's great to be a part of the PGA in that regard. But as we look at, helping players, I can say to everyone, I own a lot of technology, and there's certain pieces of technology I've used for a long period of time because it's reliable. I can communicate well with it. and it makes sense for what I'm teaching. And there's stuff out there I've bought in the past that it was to do a lot of what I just said, but maybe it was a little temperamental in lessons. It didn't always work as well, and I've moved on from it. But I know one thing, if I can show my players what they need to do, if I can explain to them what they need to do, if I can get them to feel what I want them to do, I got a pretty good chance of helping them.
Well, Bernie, it's been very entertaining as always. We appreciate your time. It's nice to see that little room you have in your home.
Yeah, a little down here.
You could do some of the ping pong shooting that Lucas likes to do with his clients. Yeah. And we want to, on behalf of the entire Met section and everybody listening from around the world, you know, yourself, John Novosel, Lee Cox, Martin, we want to thank you very much. And I'll be in touch. I'll give you a call. We'll hook up here this spring to summer. I expect to be in the DC area. I'd like to come down and see you and then play around with a few of your gadgets. So again, thank you so much. And we will see you shortly. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Nice to be with you.
All right. Thank you so much. We certainly appreciate having you. And that's going to conclude our program. And we'd like to have a few words from our chairman of the Education Committee who made all this possible, Corey Muller.
Well, John, thanks. We've said it all. Definitely a lot of passion out there. And I definitely agree with Bernie's last comments about how special the PGA of America and the professionals that make up this great organization are, to share their thoughts and ideas to attempt to make not only our players better, but to make us better professionals. So with that being said, just another reminder about Daniel Berger next week on Tuesday. And again, thanks for everybody's participation. John, well done. I appreciate all your help in organizing this and another successful spring education forum. Thanks to all that did their hard work. Caitlin on the inside there, appreciate you setting up the technology. And thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it.